The stars above seem endless, scattered across a universe so vast that it almost feels impossible for Earth to be the only home to life. Yet, despite decades of searching, we still have no clear answer. We've sent out probes, scanned radio waves, and studied thousands of planets, but nothing has spoken back. Some scientists believe the universe may be filled with life we cannot yet see. Others argue that the silence itself is a sign that we are rare, perhaps even unique. Between hope and uncertainty lies one of the greatest puzzles of all time. Are we the first? The last? What does it mean to be alone in a cosmos that feels too big to be empty? The problem of scale. Why the universe feels too big to be empty. Astronomers estimate there are around 2 trillion galaxies in the observable universe. Each of those galaxies contains hundreds of billions of stars. Around those stars, countless planets circle in steady orbits. When you add the math together, the numbers climb into ranges where words like trillion stop carrying weight. What we are really speaking of is a universe filled with so many possible homes for life that it seems almost impossible Earth could be the only one. And yet when we look out into the great dark, we hear nothing back. This tension between possibility and silence is what makes the universe feel too big to be empty. Probability has always been a strong companion in this discussion. If you stand on a beach and pick up a single grain of sand, the odds are overwhelming that there are countless other grains around you. If you look into the night sky and pick one star, the odds are overwhelming that it too is surrounded by planets. Many of these planets are small and rocky like Earth, sitting in regions where temperatures might allow water to flow. The sheer scale of numbers suggests that if conditions repeat enough times, life should emerge in at least a few other places. Our own planet proves that it is possible. So why should Earth be the lone example in a universe this large? But scale does not only work in favor of hope, it also builds walls of silence. The distances between stars are so vast that even light, the fastest thing we know, takes years or even millennia to cross them. The nearest star system, Alpha Centauri, is over 4 light-years away. That means any message we send would take more than 4 years to arrive and another 4 years to get a reply, assuming someone is there to answer. Multiply this distance by millions and the challenge becomes even clearer. Our galaxy alone is 100,000 light-years across. A signal from one side would take longer than the entire span of human civilization to reach the other. Scale gives us the sense that life must exist, but the same scale makes any meeting or message feel nearly impossible. When scientists point radio telescopes into the sky, they are not only listening for alien messages, they are also listening for the faint static of the cosmos itself, the hum left behind from the birth of the universe. In that sea of background noise, even the strongest possible alien transmission would be like a whisper carried by the wind across an ocean. To find it would mean filtering out nearly everything else. The problem is not just that the universe is too big, it is also too loud with natural signals. Every star, every planet, every galaxy produces radiation that can drown out the signal of life. The universe is almost 14 billion years old. Our species, in contrast, has only been using technology for a few centuries. That is less than the blink of an eye compared to cosmic history. It may be that other civilizations did appear, lived out their rise and fall and vanished millions or billions of years before us. If signals were sent, they could already have passed Earth long before humans knew how to listen, or they may come long after we are gone. In a universe this large, the overlap of 2 civilizations existing at the same time and being close enough to notice each other may be the rarest coincidence of all. From our perspective on Earth, the night sky feels filled with stars. But this is an illusion of nearness. Most of those points of light are not only far apart, but separated by voids so vast that they are hard to imagine. The distances are not like the gaps between islands or continents. They are closer to the gaps between galaxies, with enormous stretches of darkness where nothing visible exists. The scale of emptiness dwarfs the scale of fullness. It may be that the universe is rich with life, but so thinly spread across time and space that each island of intelligence is destined to remain isolated, unable to bridge the cosmic gulf. This is what makes the problem of scale so haunting. On the one hand, the numbers suggest abundance. With every new exoplanet discovered by telescopes, with every new measurement of stars and galaxies, the case for life elsewhere feels stronger. The math alone almost demands it. On the other hand, the distances and timescales involved stretch so far beyond human experience that abundance becomes invisible. We are left with silence not because life is rare, but because scale hides it from us. Even when we consider technology, the limits remain crushing. If we were to send a spacecraft today traveling at the fastest speeds we can currently achieve, it would still take tens of thousands of years to reach the nearest stars. Building something faster is not beyond imagination, but even the most ambitious ideas still run into the sheer enormity of space. A galaxy might feel crowded when spoken of in billions of stars, yet from the perspective of travelers or signals, it remains an ocean with distances no boat can cross in a single lifetime. The universe looks like it should be teeming with neighbors, yet it behaves as though it is empty. We see countless lights but hear no voices. It is a contrast that unsettles us because it presses against our sense of probability and belonging. To accept the silence is to accept that the universe is either far more barren than we expect or so large and indifferent that life, even when common, cannot bridge the gulfs between stars. The bigger the universe becomes in our discoveries, the more likely it seems that life should be widespread. Yet the same discoveries of its vastness remind us why we may never find it. Scale gives us hope, but also seals that hope in unreachable distances. We are small creatures on a small planet orbiting a small star, yet we live inside a universe so massive that even words like billions and trillions fall short. We cannot escape the pull of the question, if the universe is this big, why does it feel so quiet? The silence of the stars may not be a sign of emptiness at all, but of a scale too vast for voices to carry across. The fragility of chemistry. Could biology be a rare fluke? Life seems to be everywhere on Earth. It covers the oceans, the forests, the deserts, and even the frozen poles. This can give the impression that life is easy, that once it appears it spreads without effort. But beneath that image lies a fragile truth. Life rests on chemistry so exact and so particular that the smallest change could have prevented it from ever starting. Every organism on this planet, no matter how different, traces back to a moment when molecules managed to join and replicate in conditions just right for stability. That moment was not guaranteed. It may have been one of the rarest events in the universe. When Earth was young, it was not a friendly place. The surface boiled with volcanic activity, asteroids crashed down, and radiation from the sun poured across the planet. Out of this chaos, chemistry took place. Simple atoms like hydrogen, carbon, nitrogen, and oxygen collided, bonded, and broke apart. Over time, they formed more complex molecules, some of which could hold energy or interact with others in useful ways. The problem is that most of these reactions led nowhere. Molecules formed and dissolved, never building anything stable. For life to start, a very narrow path had to be followed. The right molecules had to not only form, but persist and then link together into chains with the ability to copy themselves. This delicate sequence may have required such unlikely precision that it could happen only once in an ocean of planets. Take amino acids as an example. They are the building blocks of proteins, and proteins are the workhorses of life. Experiments have shown that amino acids can form under conditions like those on early Earth. But there are dozens of different amino acids, and life use is just a set of 20 in its basic machinery. Why those 20? And why do they fit together in the exact ways needed to fold into stable proteins? Change the order slightly, and the protein does not work. Change the environment slightly, and the reaction never happens. The pathways that make proteins possible are like a puzzle with countless wrong answers and only a few that fit. Then there is the problem of replication. Without replication, there is no evolution, no growth, and no survival. DNA serves this role today, but DNA is far too complex to have appeared first. Many scientists think RNA came before because it can both store information and act like an enzyme. But RNA itself is fragile. Its components, nucleotides, are difficult to form naturally. They require just the right energy sources, just the right solvents, and just the right environment to assemble. Even then, strands of RNA are unstable, breaking apart quickly unless shielded. The fact that RNA chains could have formed, replicated, and survived long enough to lead to DNA and life may be one of the most improbable steps ever taken by nature. Water acts as a solvent, allowing molecules to move and meet. But it also breaks down fragile bonds. Too much water and molecules dilute before they can connect. Too little water and reactions cannot take place at all. On Earth, pools and shorelines may have provided just the right balance, drying and wetting in cycles that concentrated molecules without destroying them. But how often does such a balance exist on other worlds? An ocean planet with endless seas may be too wet. A frozen moon may be too dry. The chemistry of life depends not just on ingredients, but on environments tuned like an instrument. Life requires energy to build complexity. On Earth, early energy may have come from sunlight, lightning, or chemical reactions near volcanic vents. But each of these sources is unstable. Sunlight can destroy fragile molecules as easily as it builds them. Lightning is rare and scattered. Chemical vents are local, confined to cracks on the sea floor. For life to appear, the right molecules had to find the right energy in the right place. The odds of this happening by chance may be small, and yet it must have happened at least once for us to exist. Some scientists argue that these odds do not matter because the universe is so vast. Even if life has a 1 in a trillion chance of starting, the outcome should still appear again and again. But others point out that probability does not guarantee success. If the chemistry of life is more fragile than we think, then the odds may not be 1 in a trillion. They may be 1 in infinity, a chance so small that only Earth ever saw it succeed. If that is the case, then life is not a common feature of planets. It is a rare miracle, perhaps the rarest of all. What makes this fragility harder to measure is that we cannot yet repeat life's beginning in a lab. Despite decades of research, no one has managed to create a system that moves from simple chemistry to true self-replication and evolution. We can make amino acids. We can make lipids that form bubbles like primitive cell membranes. We can even piece together short strands of RNA. But the full jump from non-life to life still escapes us. If it were easy, we might expect to have solved it by now. The fact that we have not may be evidence of how unlikely the pathway really is. The survival of early life also depended on fragile conditions. Earth's history is filled with catastrophes, asteroid impacts, supervolcanoes, shifts in atmosphere. Each of these events could have wiped out primitive cells before they had time to spread. That they survived and adapted adds another layer of chance. It is possible that life began many times on Earth, only to be destroyed, and that only one line managed to hold on. If so, then even on a planet with the right chemistry, biology may not last unless luck keeps disaster at bay long enough for it to grow strong. There is another perspective, though, that adds complexity to the picture. Once life did appear, it proved resilient beyond expectation. Microbes now thrive in boiling hot springs, frozen glaciers, deep rocks, and radioactive waste. Some survive vacuum and radiation in space. This resilience suggests that the fragile stage is only at the beginning. Once chemistry tips into biology, once replication and evolution take hold, life becomes hard to erase. This may mean the universe is not empty, but filled with life that is hidden in small, tough forms. Perhaps countless planets with oceans, atmospheres, and sunlight remain barren, never crossing the delicate threshold. Perhaps Earth's chemistry lined up in a way that happens only once in all of cosmic history. Or perhaps there are other worlds where it did happen, but so rarely that each is separated by galaxies, too far apart to ever meet or even know of one another. The size of the universe allows both answers. Life could be common but spread thin, or it could be nearly unique. In this light, every living thing on Earth becomes a symbol of improbability. The bird in the sky, the tree in the forest, the bacteria in the soil, All of them descend from fragile molecules that found a way to survive billions of years ago. If the chemistry had failed, none of them would exist. We would not exist. And in the silence of space, we are left to wonder whether this fragile success was a single roll of dice that came up right, or whether it is a pattern waiting to be found in other corners of the universe. To know whether life is common or rare changes how we see ourselves. If life is common, we are part of a vast and ancient family, one branch of a tree that grows across the stars. If life is rare, then we carry something almost no one else does, something fragile, precious, and nearly impossible. And until we find another example, we will not know which vision is true. The RNA world hypothesis and its cosmic implications. The story of life's beginning has many theories, but one of the most discussed is the RNA world hypothesis. This idea suggests that before DNA and proteins took over the roles of storing information and carrying out reactions, life may have relied on RNA. RNA is a molecule similar to DNA, but with one key advantage. It can do more than just store information. It can also fold into shapes that act like enzymes, helping chemical reactions take place. This means RNA might have been able to both copy itself and run the basic chemistry needed for early life. If this is true, then the very first spark of biology may have been much simpler than what we see today. The appeal of the RNA world lies in its simplicity. For life to begin, a system must exist that can both replicate and evolve. DNA is excellent at storing information, but it cannot copy itself without proteins, and proteins cannot be built without DNA. This creates a chicken and egg problem. How could DNA and proteins appear if each required the other first? RNA seems to offer a solution. A single molecule type could, in theory, handle both roles, acting as a genetic code and as a chemical machine. If even a short RNA strand could copy itself with some accuracy, natural selection might take over, favoring more stable or faster replicating strands. From there, complexity could grow step by step. But there is a catch. RNA is a fragile molecule. It breaks down quickly in water and is sensitive to heat, radiation, and chemical instability. For RNA to be the foundation of life, it would have needed to appear in an environment that protected it long enough for replication to begin. This is no small challenge. The components of RNA, its nucleotides, are themselves difficult to form under natural conditions. Each nucleotide requires a sugar, a base, and a phosphate group, all coming together in just the right way. While laboratory experiments have shown that some of these pieces can form, making them assemble into full RNA chains remains one of the great unsolved problems in origin of life research. If the RNA world hypothesis is true, then life depends on a set of fragile steps that might be very rare. It is not just about having the right atoms, it is about those atoms combining into sugars and bases, those pieces linking into nucleotides, and those nucleotides joining into strands long enough to copy themselves. Each step narrows the odds further. The chance of all of this happening in one place, under the right conditions, may be extremely low. From this view, Earth could be one of the very few places where RNA chemistry stumbled into success. If that is the case, then the silence we hear when listening for life elsewhere might not be surprising. On the other hand, some researchers believe RNA chemistry might not be as unlikely as it seems. Studies have shown that under certain conditions, such as in pools rich in specific minerals or near volcanic vents, nucleotides can form more easily. Clays and other surfaces may have provided a template for strands to grow, protecting them from breaking apart too quickly. Cycles of wetting and drying could have concentrated molecules enough for reactions to occur. If environments like these are common, then RNA or something similar could arise many times throughout the universe. If RNA really can emerge in the right conditions, then planets with liquid water, volcanic activity, and the right mix of elements might all have the potential to generate life. This would mean the universe is not silent because life is rare, but because life is simple and slow, existing mostly as microbial worlds that never reach the stage of building radios or spaceships. In this view, the cosmos could be teeming with RNA-born life that remains invisible to us because it never evolves far beyond its starting point. The opposite view is more sobering. If the formation of RNA is such a delicate and unlikely process that it only happened once, then humanity may be utterly alone. We might live in a universe where countless planets are capable of supporting life, but none ever manage to cross the chemical barrier. It is possible that RNA is not the only path. Some scientists think that before RNA, there may have been even simpler molecules that could replicate, known as pre-RNA worlds. These systems might have used different backbones, different bases, or even entirely different chemistries. If that is the case, then RNA may not represent the universal beginning of life, but just Earth's particular version of it. Other worlds might have started with other molecules, creating forms of life that we would find hard to recognize. In that case, the universe might not be empty, but filled with life so alien that our instruments and methods cannot detect it. The search for RNA-like chemistry beyond Earth has already begun. Scientists study meteorites for traces of organic molecules, since space rocks may have delivered the building blocks of life to early Earth. Some meteorites do indeed contain nucleobases, the same letters used in DNA and RNA. This suggests that at least some parts of RNA can form naturally in space and travel across planets. If that is true, then the seeds of an RNA world might be widespread, scattered across the galaxy by comets and asteroids. Life may not need to reinvent the pieces from scratch every time. It may only need to assemble them once they arrive. Moons in our own solar system may offer testing grounds for these ideas. Europa and Enceladus both have subsurface oceans warmed by tidal forces, and missions are being planned to sample the plumes of material spraying into space. If organic molecules resembling RNA components are found there, it would be powerful evidence that such chemistry is not limited to Earth. Even Mars, with its history of liquid water and volcanic activity, might have once provided the conditions for an RNA world to form. If any traces of self-replicating molecules are ever discovered on another world, it would reshape our understanding of how likely life is to appear in the cosmos. If RNA can indeed self-assemble under common conditions, then life may be the rule, not the exception. If RNA requires impossibly precise steps, then Earth may be a lonely outpost in a universe of silence. As long as the evidence remains out of reach, the RNA world stands as both a hopeful key and a haunting reminder of how narrow the path from chemistry to biology may be. The role of planetary catastrophes in shaping early life. Earth's story is not one of steady progress, but of constant interruption. From the moment the first simple cells began to multiply, they lived on a planet that was unpredictable, sometimes violent, and often on the edge of being uninhabitable. Enormous impacts from asteroids, sudden shifts in climate, and eruptions of fire from deep within the ground changed the rules again and again. Life, fragile as it was, did not merely survive these changes, it was shaped by them. The path of biology was bent and redirected every time catastrophe struck. To understand whether life might also arise elsewhere, we have to consider not only how life begins, but how it endures. A planet without disasters may sound like a paradise, but it could be a world where evolution never finds the push it needs. A planet with too many disasters may be worse still, a place where life never has a chance to climb beyond the simplest forms. 66 million years ago, an asteroid several miles wide slammed into what is now the Yucatan Peninsula. The explosion released energy equal to billions of nuclear bombs, throwing dust into the sky, setting forests ablaze and covering the globe in a shroud of darkness that lasted for months. 3/4 of all species vanished, but in that silence of extinction, mammals, small and adaptable, found space to grow and thrive. Eventually, one of those mammal lineages gave rise to us. Without that single asteroid, the history of life would look very different. This pattern is repeated across Earth's past. Roughly 250 million years ago, during what is called the Permian extinction, volcanic eruptions in Siberia poured out enough lava to cover millions of square miles. The eruptions also released gases that poisoned the air and warmed the planet to extremes. Nearly all marine species were wiped out, along with most land animals. Yet from this destruction came new opportunities. Reptiles diversified, laying the groundwork for the rise of the dinosaurs. Catastrophe was both an ending and a beginning. Even in earlier eras, long before animals, disasters shaped life's fragile steps. About 2.4 billion years ago, the Great Oxidation Event transformed the atmosphere. Cyanobacteria, tiny microbes, began producing oxygen as waste from photosynthesis. For them, oxygen was a tool, but for much of the life that had evolved in a world without it, oxygen was toxic. Huge numbers of species died in what could be called the planet's first mass extinction. Yet oxygen also allowed more complex chemistry, setting the stage for multicellular life. Here again, catastrophe forced a leap. Other disasters came not from the sky or the land, but from the climate itself. Earth has experienced deep freezes called snowball Earth events, when glaciers stretched almost to the equator. During these times, life retreated to cracks beneath the ice or to warm refuges near volcanoes. Survival was difficult, but when the ice finally melted, ecosystems expanded with new energy. The story these events tell is not simple survival, but survival with transformation. Each disaster tested the resilience of biology, and those who endured were not the same as those who came before. What happens on other planets? If we imagine a rocky world around a distant star, does it experience the same rhythm of disaster and renewal? Consider a planet that never faces large impacts or dramatic changes. Its surface may be calm, its skies stable, its oceans quiet. Life could form, but would it ever change? Without stress, without competition, without the sharp edge of extinction, perhaps evolution would slow to a crawl. Single-celled organisms might persist for billions of years, never forced to explore new possibilities. What we think of as complexity, animals, plants, intelligence, might never arise. On the other hand, consider a planet too often shattered by chaos. If asteroids rain down every few million years, or if volcanoes constantly blanket the surface in lava, life may never move beyond the most basic forms. Complexity takes time. Evolution needs long stretches of stability to build new structures and refine new systems. Too much disaster may keep a biosphere trapped at the microbial stage. Earth seems to have balanced between these extremes. Its catastrophes were large enough to spur change, but not constant enough to erase everything. This balance may be rare. In our solar system, Mars may have been too fragile, losing its atmosphere and water before life could flourish. Venus may have been too unstable, with runaway greenhouse gases boiling the surface. If Earth's balance is unusual, then complex life might be uncommon in the universe. Scientists sometimes model the chances of life reaching intelligence using a chain of probabilities. Life must first begin, then endure, then adapt, then grow more complex, and finally develop traits like problem-solving and culture. Catastrophes appear at every link of this chain. They can break it or strengthen it. On another world, perhaps an asteroid like the one that struck Earth comes every 100 million years, always wiping away progress. On another, perhaps no asteroid ever comes, and simple algae cover the oceans forever. We are here because of extinctions, because of eruptions, because of impacts that seem, at first glance, purely destructive. This suggests that catastrophe is not only a threat to life, but part of the reason life can rise to new heights. The cosmic question, then, is how common this pattern may be. If we scan the galaxy for Earth-like planets, we might find many that are stable and quiet. But those may not be the ones that give rise to intelligent beings. The best candidates might be worlds that walk the same razor's edge as Earth, with just enough chaos to force change and just enough calm to let complexity take root. To understand whether we are alone, we must ask not only how life starts, but how it weathers the storms of its world. Somewhere out there, another planet may be caught in the same balance, with creatures evolving in the wake of disaster. Panspermia's subtle twist. Could life be older than Earth? Instead of life being born only on Earth, the idea of panspermia imagines that biology, or at least its most important ingredients, might be shared across space. Tiny seeds of life could ride comets, drift on interstellar dust, or hide inside rocks blasted away by impacts. Over millions of years, they could move from one world to another, like invisible travelers in the void. If this is true, then life might not be something unique to Earth's history at all. It could be part of a much older and larger story that began long before our planet even existed. The logic behind panspermia is not difficult to see. Earth formed about 4.5 billion years ago, but the universe itself is nearly 3 times older. If the chemistry of life is possible, it could have begun somewhere else long before Earth cooled enough to carry oceans and continents. Small organisms, or at least strands of molecules, might have found ways to survive the harsh journey between stars. Perhaps when Earth was young and still molten, pieces of space rock carried fragments of biology that seeded our planet. This would make all of us, in a sense, cosmic immigrants. One of the simplest versions of this idea is called lithopanspermia, the transfer of life through solid rock. When a large asteroid or comet strikes a planet, the explosion can be powerful enough to blast chunks of its surface into space. Some of these fragments could carry microorganisms trapped inside. If they are shielded from radiation and extreme heat, the microbes might remain dormant but alive. Over thousands or millions of years, the fragments could drift until they fall onto another planet. In this way, life could hop between worlds, slowly but steadily spreading through a solar system. Scientists have studied meteorites on Earth that came from Mars, blasted loose by ancient impacts. Inside some of these meteorites, structures resembling tiny fossils have been found, though their origin is still debated. Even without proof of Martian life, the existence of such rocks shows that natural interplanetary transport is real. If rocks can travel between Earth and Mars, the same could happen elsewhere, with planets passing seeds of life back and forth over eons. Another version of the theory is more daring. Instead of being limited to planets in one solar system, life could travel across interstellar space. Some propose that hardy microbes could cling to grains of dust, carried by radiation pressure or stellar winds. Over immense timescales, they could cross the gulfs between stars. It may sound far-fetched, but space is not entirely empty. Every year, tons of dust and small particles enter Earth's atmosphere. If even a small fraction of them carried biological material, the seeds of life could be everywhere, constantly falling on worlds ready to receive them. Comets orbit far beyond the planets, but sometimes they fall inward, grazing the warmth of a star before being flung back out. A comet could serve as both a shelter and a ship, carrying organic compounds within its frozen interior. If comets can survive for billions of years, they might act as storage vaults, scattering the ingredients of life across the galaxy. Some researchers even suggest that comets might have delivered the original building blocks of biology to Earth, seeding the young oceans with amino acids and other vital molecules. Earth's own record of biology begins at least 3.5 billion years ago. But perhaps life is much older than that, predating our world. It could have started in some other corner of the galaxy, then spread like spores through cosmic winds, drifting until it found young planets where it could take root. In this sense, Earth's biosphere could be part of a larger family tree, with roots stretching back to places and times we cannot imagine. But even if this bold vision is right, it does not solve the deepest mystery. If life came from somewhere else, where did it begin in the first place? Panspermia moves the question rather than answering it. It suggests how life could spread, but not how it first emerged. At some point on some world, under some conditions, the leap from chemistry to biology had to happen. Whether it was here or elsewhere, that moment remains hidden. The strength of panspermia lies in its ability to explain how life might survive the many obstacles of time and distance. Microbes on Earth show astonishing resilience. Some can endure freezing cold, intense heat, radiation, and even the vacuum of space for limited periods. In experiments on the International Space Station, bacterial spores exposed to space conditions have survived for years. These findings suggest that the basic idea, life traveling through space, is at least possible, yet the leap from possibility to reality is still unproven. If life is able to spread across worlds, then perhaps every biosphere in the galaxy is connected. Instead of countless independent origins, there could be a single thread weaving through space, tying planets together in a shared story. The creatures on a distant exoplanet might not only be our neighbors, but our relatives, shaped by the same ancient spark that gave rise to us. On the other hand, panspermia could mean the opposite. If life began once in one incredibly rare event and then spread everywhere, then its actual origin might be far rarer. The universe could appear full of life, yet the miracle of its beginning may have happened only a single time. This thought carries both comfort and unease. Comfort, because life might not be unique to Earth. Unease, because the very act of life starting may be one of the rarest things in the cosmos. The question of are we alone becomes more complex. Even if we discover life on another world, panspermia raises the possibility that it and we are branches of the same root. Truly alien biology, life that arose completely on its own, might be harder to find than life that shares our distant origins. As telescopes grow more powerful and as we search for biosignatures on distant planets, these questions will remain. If we find familiar chemistry elsewhere, is that proof of life's universality, or is it a sign that panspermia has already done its work? If we find alien organisms, will they truly be alien, or will they echo the same deep structures we know? The subtle twist of panspermia is that even a discovery of life beyond Earth may not tell us where life truly began. It may only deepen the mystery, pointing to a story older and stranger, the ocean world's dilemma. When scientists look beyond Earth for places where life might exist, they often turn their eyes to the small icy moons of the outer solar system. Europa and Enceladus both appear to hide vast oceans of liquid water beneath their frozen shells. Cracks in the ice release plumes of water vapor into space, carrying hints of salts, organic molecules, and other ingredients that resemble those found on Earth's oceans. To many, these moons feel like strong contenders in the search for alien biology. But as inviting as they sound, they also present a strange dilemma. The problem begins with the very feature that makes these worlds attractive, their thick ice crusts. On Europa, the outer shell may be 10 to 20 miles thick, sealing off the global ocean below. Enceladus has a thinner shell, but still one that stretches for miles above the liquid water. This ice acts as both a shield and a prison. On one hand, it protects the ocean from the harsh vacuum of space and the radiation belts of nearby planets. On the other, it cuts off the sea from sunlight and from any easy contact with the surface. If organisms exist there, they live in permanent darkness, relying on energy from hydrothermal vents at the sea floor or chemical reactions within the water. On Earth, hydrothermal vents are indeed full of life. Entire ecosystems cluster around the superheated water that gushes from cracks in the ocean floor. Strange tube worms, giant clams, and swarms of shrimp thrive in conditions once thought impossible. If Earth's deep seas can harbor such rich communities, it seems reasonable to imagine that Europa or Enceladus could too. Microbes might be abundant. Larger creatures might even roam the alien oceans, feeding on chemical energy. But here the question of scale emerges again. If biology exists in such hidden oceans, can it ever take the leap from survival to intelligence, from adaptation to civilization? Civilization, as we know it, depends on more than life itself. It requires an environment where species can manipulate their surroundings, build tools, and share knowledge. On Earth, that leap was tied closely to the land. Early humans used fire, crafted stone tools, and eventually built shelters. All of these depended on access to materials outside the body: wood, stone, clay, and later metals. The surface of the planet provided both resources and a stage for development. A species trapped in a deep global ocean may never have such chances. Even communication would be limited. In water, sound travels well, but not over planetary distances. Light cannot pass through thick ice and radio waves are blocked. An intelligent species swimming in Europa's ocean could develop social behavior, even complex thought, but they would remain hidden from the cosmos. Trapped beneath their shell, they would be unable to send signals or build technologies that extend beyond their seas. From our perspective, they would be invisible, a ghost civilization we could never detect. On Earth's surface, sunlight drives much of life. Plants absorb it. Animals eat the plants and energy flows through food webs. In Europa's ocean, sunlight never penetrates. The only energy comes from the seafloor or from chemical gradients in the water. This may be enough to sustain ecosystems, but perhaps not enough to fuel large populations or advance societies. Civilization requires surplus energy, enough not only to survive, but to create, to experiment, to innovate. In an ocean world, that surplus may be very hard to come by. If intelligent beings exist in such environments, they may be common in the universe, but forever isolated. They could develop minds as rich as ours, imaginations as deep, and cultures as intricate, yet all confined to their hidden seas. They would never see the stars, never know the larger universe, and never share their existence with us. From their perspective, too, the cosmos might remain unknowable. And yet, these hidden oceans may still be among the most likely places for life to exist. Compared to rocky planets near stars, icy moons may be more stable over long periods. Their oceans are protected from radiation, meteor impacts, and extreme climate shifts. Where Earth's surface has seen continents rise and fall, oceans dry and refill, and temperatures swing wildly, Europa's ocean may have remained relatively steady for billions of years. This stability could be ideal for simple life, allowing microbes to flourish uninterrupted for longer than life has existed on Earth's continents. The dilemma then lies in the trade-off. Stability increases the odds of life, but isolation decreases the odds of detectable civilization. When we peer into the night sky and wonder why no one has contacted us, this may be part of the answer. Perhaps life is everywhere, but the kind that reaches out is rare. The great silence we hear could be the silence of oceans sealed under ice, filled with living beings who will never see the stars. On Earth, the sight of the sky inspired myths, science, and exploration. The stars gave humans a sense of scale and curiosity that drove us outward. For a species in a sealed ocean, there is no sky, no stars, no horizon beyond the water. Their imagination would be shaped by an environment that never changes beyond the faint glow of vents and the cold ceiling of ice. Their sense of the universe might be inward, not outward, forever focused on the seas that contain them. At the same time, one can wonder about the possibilities of contact. If we were to drill through Europa's ice and send a probe into its ocean, what might we find? Perhaps nothing more than microbes. Or perhaps schools of complex creatures, adapted to darkness in ways we cannot predict. If intelligence has arisen there, it may not resemble ours in form or in thought. But whatever the reality, one thing is clear. If such beings exist, they will never contact us on their own. It is only by breaking through their icy roof that we might learn of them. The Venusian cloud mystery, a false alarm or a hidden truth. Venus has always held a strange place in humanity's imagination. For centuries it was called Earth's twin, a planet similar in size and composition, orbiting close enough to our world to suggest it might be habitable. Early astronomers once dreamed that Venus could host oceans and jungles, perhaps even intelligent life thriving beneath thick clouds. That picture has long since vanished. When spacecraft finally visited Venus, they revealed a world more hostile than any fiction had imagined. Its surface hot enough to melt lead, its pressure so crushing that no human-built probe has survived more than a few hours. Yet in recent years, Venus has found its way back into the discussion about life, not because of its surface, but because of its atmosphere. A claim about a mysterious gas raised a storm of debate. Could something be alive in the planet's clouds? The gas in question was phosphine. On Earth, phosphine is rare, and it usually comes from two main sources: human industry or microbes that thrive in low oxygen environments. Detecting it on another world, especially one with no factories or chemical plants, would immediately raise questions about biology. In 2020, a group of researchers announced that they had found phosphine in Venus's upper atmosphere, using data from radio telescopes. The discovery spread quickly, sparking headlines that suggested possible life in the Venusian clouds. For a brief moment, Venus seemed to rise again as a contender in the search for alien biology. But science rarely moves in straight lines. Almost immediately, other scientists began questioning the results. Some argued that the signal was weaker than reported, perhaps even a mistake caused by how the data was processed. Others pointed out that Venus's atmosphere is a chemical cauldron, filled with sulfuric acid and strange reactions that are still poorly understood. In such a place, could phosphine be produced without life? Could volcanism, lightning, or sunlight-driven chemistry explain it instead? The excitement of discovery was quickly tempered by doubt. What began as a possible breakthrough soon turned into a case study of how fragile early signals can be. Venus has long posed a problem for astrobiology because it sits on the knife's edge of habitability. Billions of years ago, it may have been far more Earth-like. Some climate models suggest that Venus could have once had oceans, rain, and perhaps even a stable climate. If so, life might have started there, just as it did on Earth. But a runaway greenhouse effect transformed the planet, boiling away water and leaving behind the inferno we see today. If anything survived, it would have had to retreat to the clouds, where temperatures and pressures are much more forgiving than on the surface. The idea of cloud-based life sounds strange, but it isn't impossible. Tiny microbes could, in theory, float in the atmosphere, feeding on chemicals, replicating slowly and drifting through the winds. Yet the challenges are immense. Venus's clouds are not made of water, but of sulfuric acid. Any hypothetical organism would need to withstand conditions that corrode most known materials. On Earth, there are microbes that survive in acidic hot springs and industrial waste, but nothing quite as extreme as Venus's clouds. Supporters of the phosphine discovery argued that such life, if it exists, would be very different from what we know, perhaps relying on chemistry alien to Earth's biology. Critics countered that extraordinary claims need extraordinary evidence, and the evidence here was far from certain. The search for life is filled with false starts and cautionary tales. Mars has had its share of such moments. The Viking landers in the 1970s ran experiments that gave results some thought hinted at microbial activity, but later analysis leaned toward chemical explanations. More recently, meteorites from Mars were found with structures that looked like fossilized microbes, only for skepticism to prevail again. The same pattern repeats: hope, excitement, scrutiny, and finally a more sober view. Venus is simply the latest chapter in this story. One reason for the difficulty is that detecting life from afar is a task riddled with ambiguity. Telescopes can measure gases, light, and chemical fingerprints, but they cannot yet give us direct proof. Phosphine may one day be recognized as a biosignature, but it may also turn out to be a gas that planets produce in ways we don't yet understand. Until we send probes back to Venus to sample the atmosphere directly, the question will remain open. The last dedicated missions to Venus were decades ago, and most recent space exploration has focused on Mars, outer moons, and exoplanets. The phosphine debate has reignited interest in returning to Venus, not just to confirm or deny this one finding, but to better understand the planet as a whole. If life can survive in clouds of acid on a planet that is otherwise hellish, then life may be far more resilient and widespread than we think. It would mean that even when a planet turns hostile, it does not necessarily become sterile. Small, tenacious forms of life might linger in hidden niches, waiting for us to notice them. On the other hand, if Venus turns out to be lifeless despite all its potential hiding places, it is a reminder of how rare and fragile biology might be. A world so close to Earth in size and location, yet utterly silent, would stand as a warning that habitability can vanish. Discoveries are not moments of sudden certainty, but processes of claim, debate, and refinement. The first announcement generated excitement, but what followed was just as important. Other teams reanalyzing the data, pointing out flaws and searching for alternative explanations. This is how knowledge advances, not through leaps of faith, but through the slow cutting away of errors and assumptions. For those watching from the outside, it can feel like disappointment when bold claims are retracted or softened. But in truth, this process is the strength of science. It prevents us from rushing into conclusions that may mislead us. Even if phosphine is eventually dismissed as an error, Venus will remain an intriguing world. Its atmosphere holds secrets that could reshape our understanding of planetary evolution. Its history raises questions about how two sibling planets, Earth and Venus, took such radically different paths. For astrobiology, it offers both a tantalizing possibility and a stern lesson, that the signals we seek are often faint, fleeting, and open to many interpretations. The methane puzzle on Mars, a whisper of life or just geology? On Earth, methane is closely tied to life. Cows produce it, microbes exhale it, and even wetlands release it as part of their natural cycles. To detect methane on another planet, therefore, is to stumble upon a whisper that something alive might be at work. But methane can also be forged by geology, by chemical reactions deep underground or within rocks. That dual nature, part biological, part geological, has made methane on Mars one of the most hotly debated topics in planetary science. The story began when early telescopes scanning Mars from Earth in the late 20th century suggested there might be small amounts of methane in the Martian atmosphere, but the signals were faint and uncertain. It wasn't until spacecraft began orbiting Mars and rovers started exploring its surface that the methane debate took center stage. Instruments sensitive enough to detect trace gases confirmed that methane was present, but it did not behave in ways anyone expected. On Earth, methane lingers in the air for years before breaking down. On Mars, with its thin atmosphere and lack of a protective ozone layer, scientists expected methane to vanish faster, but still not instantly. Yet the measurements from orbiters and the Curiosity rover told a stranger story. Methane on Mars appears to spike and then fade in ways that are hard to explain. At times, Curiosity detected sudden bursts of methane at Gale Crater, only for the levels to drop back to near zero shortly after. Seasonal patterns also seem to emerge, with methane peaking in the Martian summer and diminishing in winter. These rhythms raised questions. Was methane being released from the ground, trapped in ice that melted with the seasons, or was something more dynamic at play? The possibility that microbes could be the source captured imaginations. On Earth, underground microbes called methanogens produce methane as part of their metabolism. If something similar existed on Mars, living deep beneath the surface where liquid water might still persist, it could be responsible for the methane spikes. The idea fit well with the picture of Mars as a planet that was once warm and wet billions of years ago. Perhaps some ancient life retreated underground as the surface grew colder and drier, continuing to survive in hidden pockets. Each methane detection seemed to add weight to this possibility, fueling hopes that Mars was not entirely dead. But as always in planetary science, alternative explanations rushed in. Methane can be released by purely geological processes. One candidate is serpentinization, a reaction between certain types of rock and water that can create hydrogen and methane without biology. Another is the slow release of methane trapped long ago in clathrates, ice-like structures that hold gases within their crystalline cages. Volcanism, although Mars shows little current volcanic activity, might also be a source in theory. The European Space Agency's ExoMars Trace Gas Orbiter, designed specifically to detect methane with extraordinary sensitivity, reported finding almost none at all. Its instruments should have been able to pick up even tiny amounts, yet the results showed methane levels so low they were almost non-existent. This clashed with the measurements from Curiosity, which clearly recorded spikes on the surface. Were the instruments disagreeing? Or was something happening to methane near the ground that prevented it from reaching higher altitudes, where the orbiter could detect it. Some scientists proposed that dust or chemical reactions on the surface might be scrubbing methane from the air faster than expected, but no single explanation has yet solved the discrepancy. This uncertainty has turned the methane story into a puzzle with missing pieces. On one hand, Curiosity's detections are real, repeated, and carefully verified. On the other, orbiters flying above see nothing. That gap has forced scientists to consider local explanations. Perhaps methane is being released in bursts from very specific spots on the Martian surface, too small or rare for orbiters to notice. Maybe underground pockets are venting briefly before sealing again, or perhaps the methane breaks down through unknown chemical processes faster than current models allow. If methane is biological, it would mark the first evidence of life beyond Earth. But even if it is geological, the implications are still profound. Active chemistry beneath Mars's surface would point to a planet that is not geologically dead, as once assumed, but still active in ways that shape its environment. Either answer reshapes how we think about Mars. From Earth, Mars is a distant world, its atmosphere so thin that even the strongest telescopes struggle to measure it. From orbit, spacecraft can see more, but they are still limited by time, location, and sensitivity. On the ground, rovers are tied to one small patch of the planet, able to monitor only what happens around them. Together, these perspectives provide pieces of the puzzle, but not the full picture. It is like trying to solve a mystery with clues scattered across different continents, each pointing in a different direction. Adding to the mystery is the temporal nature of methane itself. Unlike water, which leaves obvious features such as dried riverbeds, methane comes and goes invisibly. Its appearance in bursts means that if we are not looking at the right place at the right time, we miss it. This fleeting quality has turned methane into a moving target for science, always elusive, always hinting but never confirming. For astrobiology, methane represents both a promise and a warning. It promises that life could leave chemical fingerprints in a planet's atmosphere, detectable even from afar. This is the same principle driving the search for biosignatures on exoplanets, where telescopes aim to spot gases like oxygen, methane, or combinations that suggest biology. But Mars reminds us that these signals are not straightforward. Methane can be life, but it can also be rock. Oxygen can be photosynthesis, but it can also come from non-biological chemistry. Every signal must be carefully untangled before we can trust it. Future missions may help resolve the puzzle. The upcoming Rosalind Franklin rover, part of the ExoMars mission, aims to drill beneath the surface and directly sample soil for organic molecules. NASA's Perseverance rover is collecting samples that may one day be returned to Earth, where laboratories can analyze them with far greater precision than any rover instrument. These efforts might not only clarify the methane question, but also reveal whether Mars still harbors active chemistry, or even hidden life. Exoplanets in the habitable zone, a statistical mirage. When astronomers first began to discover planets orbiting other stars, the results were staggering. Worlds came in every shape and size, many far stranger than anything in our solar system. Among these discoveries, one category quickly took on a special weight: planets that orbit within their star's habitable zone. This is the band of space where temperatures, in theory, would allow liquid water to exist on a planet's surface. Since water is central to life as we know it, each planet found in this zone seemed like a potential home for biology. The numbers grew quickly. Hundreds of planets appeared to be in the right zone, then thousands. Suddenly, the idea of a universe teeming with life felt closer than ever. Yet the more closely scientists looked, the more caution returned. The habitable zone is a simple idea, but reality is rarely simple. A planet can sit in this zone and still be completely hostile to life. It can be locked in a tidal embrace with its star, with one side baked in constant daylight and the other frozen in endless night. It can be smothered by a toxic atmosphere, drowned in oceans too deep for sunlight to reach, or stripped bare by powerful stellar winds. The numbers, so hopeful at first glance, may hide a harsher truth: that habitability is far rarer than the statistics suggest. Consider the first great poster child of exoplanet habitability, Kepler-22b. Discovered in 2011, it was one of the earliest confirmed planets in the habitable zone of a Sun-like star. Its orbit seemed just right, not too close, not too far. At first, Kepler-22b was hailed as a potential Earth twin, a place where oceans might roll and skies might stretch blue. But then the details emerged. Kepler-22b is about 2.4 times the size of Earth, putting it into a category called a super-Earth, or possibly even a mini-Neptune. If it has a thick, hydrogen-rich atmosphere, its surface could be more like that of a gas giant than a rocky world. Instead of oceans, it might hold crushing clouds of gas. The Kepler Space Telescope, which revolutionized the hunt for exoplanets, taught an important truth. Most of the planets we find are unlike those in our own solar system. Many orbit very close to their stars, completing a year in just days or weeks. Some are giant hot Jupiters, massive planets blazing in orbits where Mercury would be. Others are rocky but tidally locked, always presenting the same face to their star. In such places, habitability becomes a question not of simple distance, but of climate, atmosphere, and chemistry. A planet could technically be in the habitable zone, but resemble a scorched desert or a frozen wasteland. Venus is a sobering reminder of this problem. By all rights, Venus should be a habitable zone world. It is nearly Earth's twin in size, mass, and distance from the Sun. But its atmosphere is a runaway greenhouse, thick with carbon dioxide and sulfuric acid. If an alien astronomer were studying our solar system from afar, they might flag Venus as a candidate for life, unaware of its hellish conditions. In this sense, Venus is a warning that habitability is more than just orbital distance. Even Earth, the model of habitability, reveals how narrow the conditions can be. Our planet's climate is stabilized in part by plate tectonics, which recycle carbon and regulate temperature over long timescales. Without this geological engine, Earth might have veered into extremes, either freezing over completely or heating into a Venus-like state. Our magnetic field also shields us from solar radiation, keeping our atmosphere intact. Take away either of these safeguards, and Earth might look less like a cradle for life and more like a barren rock. When astronomers speak of the habitable zone, they often point out that it is necessary but not sufficient. A planet may be in the zone, but without geology, magnetism, or atmosphere, life is still unlikely. Another complication is the star itself. Many of the planets we found orbit red dwarfs, the most common type of star in the galaxy. Red dwarfs live for trillions of years, making them attractive candidates for long-term habitability. But they also flare violently, especially in their youth, blasting nearby planets with radiation that can strip away atmospheres. A world in the habitable zone of a red dwarf may endure centuries of bombardment before its star quiets down. By then, its air and water may already be gone. This raises the unsettling possibility that many habitable exoplanets are habitable only on paper. Astronomers hope to study exoplanet atmospheres for gases like oxygen, methane, or combinations that suggest biology. But as Mars has already shown us, these signals are ambiguous. Detecting gases from dozens of light years away will test the limits of our instruments, and even then, interpretation will remain tricky. A habitable zone planet with oxygen might look like proof of life, only to reveal itself as a false alarm. The numbers, however, still seduce. Based on Kepler's discoveries, scientists estimate that billions of planets orbit in the habitable zones of their stars. In our galaxy alone, there may be more such worlds than there are stars. It is a staggering thought. So many chances for oceans, so many possibilities for biology. But this abundance may also be misleading. If only a tiny fraction of habitable zone planets are truly habitable, the odds shrink quickly. The universe could hold countless barren rocks with only a sprinkling of true Earth-like havens. The habitable zone is not meaningless, but it is only the first step. It narrows the field, but does not provide answers. It is like circling neighborhoods on a map, where people might live without knowing if the houses are abandoned, flooded, or built at all. Until we can look closer, see surfaces, analyze atmospheres, and measure climates, we cannot know if these worlds are alive or dead. The James Webb Space Telescope has already begun to probe exoplanet atmospheres, searching for signs of water vapor, carbon dioxide, and methane. Upcoming missions like the Habitable Worlds Observatory and ground-based giants like the Extremely Large Telescope aim to study smaller, rocky planets in detail. These instruments may reveal whether the habitable zone truly corresponds to habitability or whether it is more of a statistical mirage filled with false positives. The dark biospheres hypothesis: life hidden where we cannot see. The search for life beyond Earth has always been shaped by the limits of our tools. We build telescopes that can catch faint light from distant stars, and we design instruments that can split that light into patterns, hoping to find the chemical traces of life. But all of this depends on the assumption that life will make itself visible in ways we expect. We look for gases in the air, for signatures in the atmosphere, for patterns that echo the biology we know. Yet there is another possibility, that life might be out there in abundance, hidden from us in ways we cannot yet detect. This is the idea behind what some scientists call dark biospheres, worlds where life thrives, but remains invisible to our gaze. On Earth, even here at home, there are ecosystems that for centuries went completely unnoticed. Deep underground, in caves and mines, microbes live off chemical energy, feeding on minerals or hydrogen released from rocks. Entire biospheres exist below the surface, far removed from sunlight. In the deep oceans, around hydrothermal vents, strange communities of organisms rely on the heat and chemicals rising from the sea floor. When these were discovered in the late 20th century, they forced scientists to rethink what life really needs. Sunlight, once thought essential, was no longer required. Energy can come from rocks, from chemistry, from the planet itself. If such hidden ecosystems could flourish unnoticed on our own world, how many more could exist elsewhere, beyond the reach of our telescopes? Take Mars, for example. Its surface today is cold, dry, and blasted by radiation. But just a few meters underground, conditions could be very different. There might still be frozen water or even thin layers of briny liquid shielded from the harsh environment above. Microbes living there would never release gases in large amounts, and their world would not glow with signs of life for us to detect. To an orbiting telescope, Mars would seem silent. Yet beneath the surface, a dark biosphere could be thriving. Imagine billions of planets, many with subsurface oceans, thick atmospheres, or dense clouds. Life could be common in all of them, but hidden in ways that escape detection. A planet with a deep ocean might never produce oxygen or methane in its skies. A world cloaked in thick clouds might release signals that are absorbed before escaping into space. Some biospheres could recycle their chemistry so completely that nothing ever leaks out. From afar, these planets would look dead, even though up close they might be teeming with activity. This possibility challenges one of the key strategies of modern astrobiology, the search for biosignatures. For decades, scientists have hoped to detect life indirectly by spotting unusual gases in a planet's atmosphere. But a dark biosphere may never announce itself in this way. A world full of microbes living underground or under ice might look no different from a barren rock. In such a case, the galaxy could be rich with life, but invisible to every tool we have. We already have examples of this blindness. When astronomers look at Earth from space, what makes it stand out is the oxygen in its atmosphere, the direct result of photosynthesis. But Earth was full of life for billions of years before oxygen filled the air. For much of its history, life consisted only of microbes, most of them underground or in the ocean. To a distant observer during that time, Earth would have looked sterile. If our planet could hide its life for so long, why should we expect other worlds to be any easier to read? Are we underestimating how common life is because we are only looking for certain signals? Perhaps the reason we have not found any alien biosignatures is because they do not always leave obvious fingerprints. Our instruments are tuned to detect one type of biology, the kind that transforms atmospheres, but the universe may be dominated by another kind. The implications extend to the Fermi paradox, the famous question of why, in a galaxy filled with stars and planets, we see no signs of civilizations. If most life is trapped in dark biospheres, buried beneath ice or locked underground, it may never develop the ability to signal or communicate. Intelligent life might be exceedingly rare because most ecosystems never escape their hidden niches. Even if intelligence does arise in such places, it could be forever limited by its environment. For science, this is both a challenge and an invitation. It challenges us to expand our search strategies, to look not just for atmospheric gases, but for more subtle clues. Perhaps we need to listen for chemical imbalances, for heat patterns, or for odd surface features that suggest activity below. It also invites us to consider life in forms and habitats that are unfamiliar. Instead of expecting another Earth, we must be ready to find ecosystems that are hidden, silent and alien in ways that are difficult to imagine. Life without DNA. Alternative biochemistries in theory. On Earth, DNA is the instruction manual for every living thing. It holds the genetic code, it guides the building of proteins, and it carries information from one generation to the next. Because it works so well here, it is easy to believe that DNA is the only possible way life could exist anywhere in the universe. But this assumption may be far too narrow. Life on Earth is only one example, and we do not yet know if it is typical or a strange accident. If life arose elsewhere under very different conditions, it might follow rules that look nothing like our own biology. That means we may one day encounter living systems that do not use DNA, do not rely on proteins, and do not even need water as their base. To imagine such possibilities, scientists have started to explore what they call alternative biochemistries. What if the building blocks of life were not carbon-based? What if the genetic system was not DNA or RNA? What if water, so central to our own biology, was replaced by some other liquid? These questions are serious scientific paths of inquiry. If the universe is as vast as we know it to be, then limiting our expectations to carbon, DNA, and water could blind us to real forms of life that simply do not fit our Earth-based picture. One of the first alternatives considered is ammonia. On Earth, water is the solvent of life. It allows molecules to move, collide, and react. But ammonia, which is made of nitrogen and hydrogen, shares some of the same properties. It can dissolve a wide range of substances. It is abundant in the universe, and it remains liquid over a useful range of temperatures. For a planet or moon colder than Earth, ammonia could play the role water plays here. Titan, the largest moon of Saturn, is an especially interesting case. While its surface is covered with liquid methane and ethane lakes, scientists believe there may also be subsurface reservoirs of ammonia-water mixtures. In such an environment, molecules might come together and form complex systems capable of growth, replication, and evolution, without ever needing DNA. Silicon is another candidate. Carbon is the backbone of Earth life because it can form strong and versatile bonds with other atoms. But silicon, sitting just below carbon on the periodic table, shares some of those traits. It can form 4 bonds. It can create long chains, and it is common in the universe. The problem with silicon is that on Earth, its compounds are usually less flexible than carbon's. Silicon tends to form crystals like quartz rather than dynamic molecules like proteins. But in very different planetary environments, perhaps hotter or under different pressures, silicon-based chemistry might behave in ways we do not see here. One might picture silicon life as creatures of rock or crystal, but if such life exists, it might be more fluid and chemical than solid. There are also more radical ideas. Some researchers have speculated about plasma life inside stars or energy-based life forms that use magnetic fields to structure themselves. Others imagine living systems built on exotic solvents like methane, which exists in liquid form on Titan. Liquid methane is much colder and less reactive than water, but some simple reactions are still possible in it. If a methane-based life form ever developed, it would move and evolve very slowly compared to us, with chemical processes stretched out over long timescales. To us, such life might appear inert or frozen, but from its own perspective, it might be just as active as our cells are in water. Another important point is that DNA itself may not be the only way to store information, even in a carbon-based system. Researchers on Earth have already created synthetic genetic systems using different sets of chemical bases. These xenonucleic acids, or XNAs, can hold and pass on information just like DNA, but they use different molecular building blocks. This shows that the role of DNA as an information carrier can be filled by other molecules. It suggests that alien life may have developed its own version of an instruction system, one that works well in its unique environment, but would be unrecognizable to us at first. The difficulty we face is that we are so tied to our own biology that we risk overlooking life when it does not resemble us. For example, most of our life detection tools are designed to search for things like oxygen in the atmosphere, organic carbon molecules, or structures that look like cells. But what if a living system uses sulfur compounds instead of carbon, or breathes ammonia instead of oxygen? What if it does not form cells at all, but instead exists as networks of self-sustaining chemical reactions in ice or gas? Such life could be present even in places we currently label as barren. It might not look alive until we broaden our definition of what life means. Hydrocarbon-based life has also been seriously discussed. On Titan, scientists have found signs of chemistry that resembles lifelike processes, though at much colder temperatures. Some models suggest that simple hydrocarbon molecules could organize themselves into stable membranes, similar to cell walls in liquid methane. These hypothetical structures are called azotosomes. They could serve as the containers for methane-based life, playing the same role that lipid membranes do in Earth cells. While no direct evidence exists yet, it shows how chemical imagination can reveal paths to life far beyond water and DNA. Even stranger possibilities exist when we think about life not as a strict recipe, but as a set of functions: metabolism, self-replication, and evolution. A system that can take in energy, use it to maintain order, and pass on its structure to new generations may count as life, even if it is not built from anything we recognize. For example, researchers have created protocells in the lab that are nothing more than droplets of chemicals in oil. These droplets can divide, absorb materials, and change over time. They are not alive in the same sense as us, but they show that lifelike processes can emerge from very different chemical rules. Extrapolate that to the conditions of distant exoplanets, and it is not unreasonable to think entire ecologies might exist without DNA, proteins, or water at all. Are we prepared to recognize life if it does not fit our picture of cells, genes, and water? Would we accept a chemical network or a methane-based membrane as alive? Or would we dismiss it as a curiosity? If we send probes to distant exoplanets with only Earth-centric detection tools, we may miss living systems that are thriving in their own alien ways. The challenge for scientists now is to design instruments that can sense the universal patterns of life, not just Earth patterns. Instead of looking only for oxygen or DNA fragments, we might look for imbalances in chemistry that suggest active processes or for repeating structures that point to information storage. Life, no matter what form it takes, must resist entropy by maintaining order. It must capture energy from its environment. It must have a way to pass on structure or memory. These principles may hold whether life is carbon-based, silicon-based, or something even stranger. Our biology feels natural and inevitable, but in truth, it may be just one successful solution among many. Life could have arisen in countless different ways, each shaped by the conditions of its world. The fact that we are here, breathing oxygen and built from DNA, is a story of one path among billions of possibilities. And in the cold seas of Titan, the high pressures of Jupiter's atmosphere, or the distant exoplanets orbiting red dwarfs, entirely different stories may be unfolding right now. Plasma life and the speculation of conscious stars. Plasma is often called the fourth state of matter, beyond solid, liquid, and gas. It is a soup of charged particles, electrons and ions moving freely under extreme heat and energy. Stars are made of plasma. Lightning bolts are plasma. Even the faint glow of a neon sign is plasma. It is a state of matter that does not resemble anything we know from biology. Yet some scientists and thinkers have wondered whether it might serve as the foundation for life in environments too harsh for ordinary chemistry. The idea of plasma life pushes the boundaries of imagination because it suggests that life might not need molecules at all. On Earth, life depends on atoms bonding together to form proteins, DNA, and membranes. But plasma does not allow stable bonds in the same way. Instead, it is governed by electric and magnetic fields. In such conditions, organization could emerge not from molecules, but from electromagnetic patterns. Waves, filaments, and vortices of plasma can form complex and stable structures. If those structures could store information, replicate patterns, and harness energy from their environment, they might qualify as life, even though they are made of nothing but charged particles. One of the most famous speculations of this kind came from the Soviet scientist V.N. Tsitovich in the early 2000s. He proposed that under certain conditions, plasma clouds could self-organize into structures that behave in lifelike ways. In his models, the electromagnetic forces inside plasma created filaments that twisted together, split, and sometimes replicated. They could store information in the patterns of their fields, much like DNA stores information in its sequences. While this is still theoretical, it shows that plasma can behave in surprisingly organized and persistent ways, even in chaotic environments. If such plasma structures can exist, the next question is where they might be found. The most obvious setting is inside stars. Stars are immense plasma reactors with energy flows and magnetic fields on a scale beyond comprehension. Within them, plasma behaves in ways we do not fully understand. Sunspots, solar flares, and magnetic loops show that stars are not just featureless balls of burning gas. They are dynamic, ever-changing systems full of order and structure. If complex plasma patterns can arise anywhere, stars may be the prime environment. Some have even speculated that stars themselves could harbor forms of life or even forms of consciousness, emerging from the vast interplay of plasma and magnetism. The idea of conscious stars may sound like pure fantasy, but it has been considered more seriously than one might think. A star contains enormous amounts of energy and complexity, two ingredients often associated with the potential for life. The magnetic fields of stars can span thousands of kilometers and shift in intricate cycles. These patterns are not random. They follow rules, interact, and sometimes behave unpredictably. Could such systems give rise to information processing, the basic requirement for thought? If neurons in our brains can produce consciousness through electrical activity, might a star's plasma currents achieve something similar on a different scale? There are also theories about plasma life in less extreme environments, such as the atmospheres of gas giants. Planets like Jupiter and Saturn are mostly made of hydrogen and helium, but deeper down, the pressure and temperature are so high that parts of their atmospheres behave like plasma. There, lightning storms rage, magnetic fields churn, and energy flows constantly. Such regions might allow self-organizing plasma structures to form, perhaps existing as floating patterns in the storms. To us, they would be invisible, intangible, and likely unrecognizable. But in their own world, they might function as coherent systems, exchanging energy and information in ways we cannot yet imagine. The challenge is that we do not know how to define life when it takes such alien forms. Plasma does not leave behind fossils. It does not produce chemical signatures that our detectors are built to find. If a plasma-based life form drifted through the upper layers of Jupiter or flared on the surface of a star, it would be almost impossible for us to identify it. At best, we might notice strange patterns or behaviors that do not fit simple physical explanations. Even then, our tendency would be to dismiss them as natural phenomena rather than living systems. recognizing plasma life may require not just new instruments, but a shift in mindset. For centuries, people have looked at the night sky and imagined stars as beings with personalities, gods or spirits. Ancient myths often spoke of stars as living or thinking entities. Modern science stripped away those myths, teaching us that stars are nuclear furnaces governed by physics. Yet, funnily enough, speculation about plasma life brings back a sliver of that old vision, not through mysticism, but through science. The implications of such life would be staggering. A star-based intelligence would operate on timescales far beyond our own. Stars live for millions to billions of years. If consciousness could emerge within them, their thoughts might unfold at a pace that feels glacial to us, but natural to them. What seems like a slow solar cycle to us might be the equivalent of a heartbeat to a plasma being. Communication with such entities would be nearly impossible, as we measure time in seconds and years, while they might think in millennia. Yet if they exist, they would be ancient and vast compared to anything on Earth. Even if stars themselves are not conscious, plasma life in some form remains an intriguing possibility. Laboratory experiments have shown that plasma can self-organize under controlled conditions. When researchers trap plasma in magnetic fields, it sometimes forms stable cell-like structures. These structures can grow, divide, and even exchange energy. They hint at the kind of complexity plasma can reach. Scale this up to the energy-rich environments of stars and gas giants, and it becomes easier to imagine that plasma might support processes we do not yet recognize as biological. Astronomers already observe stars in extraordinary detail, studying their light, their flares, and their magnetic activity. If plasma life leaves any signature, it might appear as anomalies in these observations, patterns that suggest intentional organization rather than random turbulence. Similarly, spacecraft studying gas giants might one day record unexplained plasma phenomena in their atmospheres. But for now, these remain only hints and speculations, with no hard evidence. The universe is filled with plasma. Over 99% of visible matter is in this state. If life can emerge from plasma, then it might be far more common than we imagine, existing in stars, in nebulae, and in the storms of giant planets across the galaxy. Alien languages we couldn't recognize as language. When one imagines contact with an alien civilization, one pictures a clear signal, something like a radio transmission carrying words or patterns that can be immediately decoded. In the popular view, it might be a greeting, a sequence of numbers, or even a kind of cosmic Morse code that leaves no doubt about its meaning. But the reality is likely far more complicated. Communication is shaped by biology, environment, and culture. What seems obvious to one species might be invisible to another. We may already be surrounded by signals from elsewhere and fail to recognize them as language at all. Human language is only one way of sending information. Dolphins whistle and click, arranging sounds in ways that may carry meaning we still cannot fully decode. Whales produce long songs across the oceans, layered and structured, yet only partly understood by us. Bees dance to show the direction of flowers, a silent movement that encodes distance and orientation. Octopuses shift colors and textures across their skin, creating patterns that may act as signals to each other. Each of these forms of communication is natural, but to humans, they seem strange. If it took decades to begin decoding the songs of whales, how much harder would it be to notice a language created by beings that evolved on a completely different world? The challenge goes even deeper. Human senses are tuned to a narrow slice of reality. We hear only a limited range of sound. We see only a small portion of the electromagnetic spectrum, and we respond to signals that are shaped by our particular evolutionary path. An alien species may communicate using forms of energy that we cannot perceive without instruments. Their language might be carried in pulses of magnetic fields, in ultraviolet flashes, or in vibrations across materials we never thought of as channels for meaning. If such messages arrived on Earth, they could pass us by as static, noise, or simple background activity. We might record them in our data, even study them, but never suspect they are intentional. In the early days of radio astronomy, pulsars were a mystery. When Jocelyn Bell Burnell first detected their regular beats in 1967, they were so precise that she jokingly labeled them LGM, short for Little Green Men. Today we know they are rotating neutron stars, but at the time no one could be sure. The lesson is clear. When a new pattern emerges from space, our first thought is often natural physics, not intelligence. That makes sense. Most of what the universe produces is not alive. But if alien communication does not resemble our expectations, we may categorize it as a natural phenomenon and move on, never realizing we missed a message. Even if we did identify a signal as artificial, the next step would be to understand it. Human languages vary enormously, yet they share common roots because of shared biology and social needs. Alien communication may not have any of those anchors. Their messages may not be linear like our sentences. They could be layered, simultaneous signals, overlapping like chords in music but carrying distinct meanings. They could encode concepts not in words, but in complex mathematical shapes, or in shifting relationships between values. To us, such communication could look like nothing more than random variation. Consider mathematics, often imagined as the universal language. It is true that numbers and ratios are constant across the universe. The ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter is the same everywhere. But how those ideas are expressed is not guaranteed to match our forms. Humans write pi equals to 3.14159, but an alien species might never have the concept of decimals. They might encode it as rhythms, pulses, or spatial arrangements of signals. If we only searched for familiar structures, we could miss a mathematical message hidden in plain sight. Another problem is intent. Aliens may not even be trying to speak with us. They could be talking to each other in a language never meant to be intercepted. Imagine listening to the chatter of a forest at night. Frogs call, crickets chirp, bats send out sonar. To each species, the meaning is clear. To a human ear, it is only a background of noise. In the same way, an alien civilization might fill their world with signals that are rich in meaning to them, but meaningless to us. If those signals leaked into space, our instruments might pick them up and catalog them as interference or random background. We would never realize they were alive with conversation. Our instruments collect enormous amounts of data from space every day. Radio telescopes map the skies, satellites scan the Earth's surroundings, probes listen for activity on other planets. Buried in all that data could be structures or repetitions that are not just cosmic static, but intentional communication. Yet, unless the pattern fits into our framework of what language should look like, it may never be recognized. In effect, we might already have alien voices in our records, filed away under the wrong labels. There are efforts to prepare for this. Some researchers explore the idea of agnostic biosignatures, signs of life that do not assume a specific form. Applied to communication, the same idea suggests searching not for words or numbers, but for statistical properties of information. For example, a true language often shows a balance between repetition and novelty. Too much repetition, and it is simple noise. Too much novelty, and it becomes random. Natural systems like weather or magnetism usually fall into one extreme or the other. A structured language tends to occupy a middle ground. By looking for these markers, scientists hope to catch signals that are meaningful even if we cannot translate them. But even then, translation may be impossible. Imagine an alien language built on sensory experiences humans do not have. If their biology allows them to sense electric fields directly, their words may encode subtle variations we cannot imagine. If they see more dimensions of color, their concepts may be tied to distinctions we cannot grasp. Communication depends not only on symbols, but on shared experiences. Without that overlap, even a perfectly received alien message could remain forever closed to us. If another civilization has been broadcasting for centuries, but we cannot decode their language, does that count as communication? If we detect a signal and know it is artificial but cannot extract meaning, have we succeeded or failed? In one sense, proof of intelligence itself would be extraordinary. In another, it would be a constant reminder of our limits. The universe could be filled with voices, but to us, they would remain whispers in a language we will never learn. And yet, there is also a strange comfort in the idea. Just as we overlook the languages of whales and bees until we take the time to study them, perhaps one day our tools will sharpen enough to notice patterns that today seem invisible. Maybe alien messages are already woven into the fabric of what we call noise, waiting for the moment when curiosity and persistence finally allow us to hear. Until then, we remain listeners in the dark, ears pressed to the cosmos, never certain whether the silence is real or only a matter of recognition. The wow, signal, and the problem of one-off events. In the summer of 1977, a faint signal came through a radio telescope in Ohio and changed the way people thought about the search for other minds in the universe. It lasted only 72 seconds. A volunteer astronomer, Jerry Amon, was scanning the printout of radio data when he circled the unusually strong burst and wrote "wow" in the margin. That handwritten note gave the signal its famous name, the wow signal. What was striking was not only its strength, but its purity. It came in at a very narrow band of radio frequencies, just the sort of thing that natural processes rarely produce, and it seemed to arrive from the direction of the constellation Sagittarius. For a moment, it looked like the universe had spoken back. But then it was gone. Dozens of follow-up attempts in the years that followed pointed radio dishes at the same patch of sky, sometimes for hours, sometimes for days, hoping for a repeat. Nothing ever came. A single, clean, powerful burst, and then silence. It was not like a repeating pattern that can be tested again and again. It was not like a pulsar, where regularity proves a natural source. It was a lone spike on a piece of paper, with no way to replay it. And in science, repetition is everything. Without it, we cannot be sure. There are many possible explanations for what happened that day. Some argue it might have been a reflection from a satellite, though no known craft matched the position at the time. Others suggest a natural astrophysical event that was either rare or poorly understood. A few point to comets that were in the region decades later, releasing hydrogen that could mimic such a frequency. Yet each of these explanations leaves gaps. The comet theory, for example, struggles with the strength and clarity of the signal. Satellite reflections are messy, not pure. And no known natural source produces a one-off burst with such characteristics in that narrow radio band. This is the problem with one-off events. They sit in a strange space between possibility and imagination. If the wow signal had repeated even once, it could have been studied in detail, broken down by frequency, tracked across the sky. Scientists could have tested whether it was drifting, as a planet might cause, or whether it was steady, like an engineered transmission. But with only one burst, the record is frozen. The event cannot be replayed. There is no second data point to compare against. Space is noisy. Pulsars, quasars, solar flares, cosmic rays, all of them fill the background with bursts and rhythms. Our own planet is noisy as well. Radio waves leak from Earth into space every second, and our satellites, aircraft and communications create a haze that can confuse sensitive instruments. Sorting through this fog is like standing in a crowded room, listening for a single whisper. When something strange appears, the question is whether it is truly a whisper from across the universe or just a trick of the crowd. The wow signal has become a symbol of this difficulty. For decades, it has been held up as the best candidate for an extraterrestrial broadcast, not because the evidence is strong, but because it has resisted attempts at an ordinary explanation. It sits on the thin edge between belief and doubt. For some, it is proof that someone once tried to get our attention. For others, it is simply a reminder that random noise can sometimes look meaningful. Science thrives on patterns. It needs data that can be checked and rechecked. One-off events do not fit neatly into that method. They can be noted, catalogued, and debated, but they cannot be confirmed. This makes them powerful in story but weak in evidence. And yet, in the search for life, we may not have the luxury of repetition. If another civilization sent us a message once, perhaps deliberately aimed and then forgotten, it might never be sent again. If a transmission swept past Earth only once in a million years, we would have no way to confirm it except by chance. Even if the galaxy is full of signals, our position in time and space may mean we only ever catch brief glimpses. Most stars are far away. Messages may take thousands of years to travel, and civilizations may not last long enough to send them continuously. A single burst, like the WOW signal, could be all we ever see of a world's existence. It could be the last breath of a dying culture or a short experiment abandoned long ago. For that reason, astronomers have tried to build strategies to handle these rare events. When an unusual signal appears today, observatories often coordinate quickly, turning multiple telescopes to the same spot to confirm or rule out interference. They use different frequencies and different instruments, so that if one sees something odd, another can confirm it. The lesson of the WOW signal is clear. You must act fast, because the universe will not always give you a second chance. The WOW signal has lived in popular imagination for nearly half a century because it embodies the tension of the search. It is at once nothing and everything. It could be a meaningless blip, or it could be the first and only handshake humanity has ever received across the stars. The Zoo Hypothesis: Observers in the Shadows. The Zoo Hypothesis suggests that the reason we have not found evidence of other civilizations is not because they are absent, but because they are deliberately holding back. According to this view, advanced beings could be fully aware of us, watching and studying, while making sure we never notice them directly. We would be like animals in a protected preserve, free to live and develop within boundaries we do not even realize exist. If a civilization is old enough and advanced enough to travel between stars, then avoiding detection by a species like ours would be trivial. We struggle to send probes just beyond our solar system, while they may already have technologies beyond our comprehension. To them, keeping Earth under quiet observation could be no harder than humans placing a camera in a forest to study wildlife. From this perspective, our radio telescopes, satellites, and ambitious search projects might look clumsy and naive. We cast our signals into the dark, not realizing that the dark may be filled with eyes watching back. When we look to the skies and hear nothing, we assume absence. But silence can also be deliberate. A parent might stay quiet to avoid waking a sleeping child. A hunter may stay hidden so as not to startle prey. In this framework, the lack of alien messages could be a kind of policy, an agreement among advanced civilizations to let emerging worlds like ours grow without interference. The stillness becomes an act of restraint, not evidence of emptiness. It means we may not be the ones who decide when contact happens. For all our efforts to search, to send out signals, to imagine our place among the stars, the final choice might rest with those who are already out there. If they are watching, they may have rules about when a species is ready. Perhaps they wait until a civilization reaches a certain level of stability, or until it passes a series of crises without self-destruction. If that is the case, then Earth could be under quiet evaluation, and our every failure or success could be a factor in a decision we will never see coming. The notion of being observed without knowing is not entirely foreign. On Earth, humans have created protected areas for animals. We study them with hidden cameras, we track their movements, and sometimes we even manage their populations, all while they go about their lives unaware of the broader context. From the perspective of a bird or a deer, the forest feels natural and free. Only we know it is monitored, shaped, and sometimes manipulated. The Zoo Hypothesis asks us to consider that humanity might be in a similar position, except on a planetary scale. Skeptics point out the difficulty of maintaining such secrecy. How could countless civilizations across the galaxy agree to stay silent about Earth? But if even one advanced culture is powerful enough, it might not require agreement. A single group with sufficient control could enforce the policy, ensuring that no stray signals reach us. Alternatively, the number of civilizations may not be as large. A small group of powerful societies could make decisions on behalf of the rest, much like empires on Earth once shaped the destinies of many smaller cultures. The key point is that if someone is far ahead of us, their ability to control the situation is beyond dispute. Are we being protected, like a rare species kept safe from predators? Are we being studied? Our history unfolding as part of some grand catalogue? Or are we simply being ignored until we become interesting enough to warrant contact? Each possibility carries its own weight, and none are easy to dismiss. There are also darker interpretations. If we are in a preserve, it might not be for our benefit. Zoos on Earth are not designed for the animals' freedom, but for human purposes, whether conservation, study, or entertainment. If an alien civilization views us in the same way, our autonomy might be an illusion. We may think we are shaping our own future, while in reality, our path has already been outlined by rules we do not understand. Perhaps certain catastrophes we attribute to chance are not chance at all, but careful adjustments to keep us within limits. Perhaps our own attempts at contact are quietly filtered, blocked before they can reach beyond our solar system. What would convince another civilization that we are worth speaking to? Is it technological power, such as mastering fusion energy or building interstellar ships? Or is it social maturity, such as ending wars and learning to live sustainably on our planet? If readiness is measured by ethics rather than tools, then humanity may be far from the point of contact. The constant struggles between nations, the destruction of our environment, the presence of nuclear weapons, all could be marks against us in the eyes of observers who value long-term survival and cooperation. There is an irony in imagining that while we debate whether life exists elsewhere, the answer could be orbiting right above us, hidden but present. Advanced beings could have devices stationed in the outer solar system, quietly monitoring Earth. They could be disguised as asteroids or hidden in places we rarely look. They might not even need physical objects at all. Advanced physics could allow forms of observation we cannot imagine. To us, the sky would remain silent. To them, it would be full of data about our every step forward and every mistake. Techno-signatures beyond radio, what we might be missing. Radio waves have been the backbone of human communication for more than a century, and they are practical for traveling long distances through space. They pass through dust, they can be broadcast widely, and we know how to generate and detect them. It feels natural to assume that if other civilizations want to talk, they would use the same tool. But this assumption may be narrow. The universe offers many ways to send information, and by listening only for radio, we may be missing entire forms of communication flowing right past us. One alternative is the use of light itself. Instead of spreading energy across broad radio frequencies, a civilization could send bursts of laser light, sharp and concentrated, aimed at a specific target. Laser communication has already been tested on Earth and between spacecraft, where it offers far higher data rates than traditional radio. In space, a brief flash of a powerful laser could stand out against the background of stars, almost like a cosmic lighthouse. We have the ability to look for such signals, but our searches are still small and irregular. A civilization might have already sent out thousands of laser bursts, and unless one happens to fall within the narrow slice of sky we are watching at that exact time, we would never know. Another possibility involves particles far stranger than light. Neutrinos are ghostly, almost invisible particles that flow constantly from the sun and from nuclear reactions in the universe. They pass through matter so easily that billions of them stream through your body every second without leaving a trace. For this reason, neutrinos are notoriously difficult to detect, but their very elusiveness could make them an ideal communication tool for advanced beings. A neutrino beam could pass through planets, stars, and gas clouds with little loss of signal. Unlike radio, which can be blocked or scattered, neutrinos could deliver a clean message across cosmic distances. We have built detectors on Earth that can sense these particles, massive underground tanks filled with special liquids, but they are designed to study natural neutrinos, not artificial ones. If aliens used neutrinos for communication, the signals might already be washing over us unnoticed, drowned in the flood of natural background particles. The frontier of possibilities stretches even further when we think about the fabric of space itself. In the last decade, humans have learned to detect gravitational waves, faint ripples in space-time caused by massive events like colliding black holes. These waves are subtle, yet they can travel across the universe without being absorbed or distorted. For us, detecting them required enormous instruments with laser beams stretching kilometers in length, tuned to catch distortions smaller than the width of a proton. If we, at our young technological stage, can detect these signals, what might a civilization millions of years ahead be capable of? They might use gravitational waves deliberately, encoding messages within patterns that we cannot yet distinguish from natural noise. To us, they are background events. To them, they could be letters in a galactic conversation. Every time we assume a certain method of communication is obvious, we are projecting our own stage of development onto the universe. For most of human history, smoke signals or drums were effective tools for sending information across distances. If someone in that era tried to imagine advanced communication, they might have envisioned louder drums or taller fires, not satellites and fiber optics. Likewise, when we point our radio dishes into the sky, we may be repeating the same mistake. Radio may not be the standard of the universe, but just one early step. Civilizations older and wiser than ours might have long abandoned it, choosing methods that to us look like background hum or worse, nothing at all. Even within light itself, the possibilities expand. Aliens might not send laser bursts, but use modulated starlight, subtly adjusting the brightness of stars with advanced technology. A star that flickers in a pattern might be sending a message, but to us, it would look like a natural variation or a distant system with dust passing in front of it. Massive structures, such as Dyson spheres, could also act as a kind of techno-signature, not intentional communication, but a visible sign of engineering. If we restrict our imagination to radio signals, we risk missing these more indirect forms of evidence. There is also the question of bandwidth. Radio can send information, but the amount is limited. With lasers, neutrinos, or gravitational waves, the potential for higher data rates is far greater. If advanced civilizations exchange vast libraries of knowledge, they may have already chosen methods that allow such speed and efficiency. By contrast, we sit at the edge of the cosmic network, tuned to the equivalent of an outdated frequency, waiting for a message that may never come. Our tools are designed with specific goals. Radio telescopes look for narrowband signals because that is what we expect. Optical telescopes search for changes in starlight, usually caused by planets, not deliberate signaling. Neutrino detectors look for natural events, not patterns. Gravitational wave observatories are focused on cataclysms, not hidden codes. It is entirely possible that alien communication is already visible in our data, but since it does not match our expectations, we file it away. The history of science shows how often discovery is delayed because no one thought to look differently at existing information. Even on Earth, we can see how narrow our view can be. If a radio telescope had been pointed at our planet 500 years ago, it would have heard nothing. If it were pointed today, it would pick up a storm of signals. But those signals would not sound like language at first. They would be patterns of static, bursts of frequency, and overlapping broadcasts. Without context, they might not seem artificial at all. In the same way, alien communication may not announce itself as clear speech, but as subtle regularities buried in complexity. The key is not only to listen, but to learn how to recognize meaning in unfamiliar forms. Instead of searching only for direct messages, we can search for side effects of technology. Heat from giant structures, unusual chemical imbalances in atmospheres, or precise alignments of energy sources could all point to activity. These are not conversations in the traditional sense, but they are signals of presence. The danger is that we might dismiss them as natural oddities, just as early astronomers once dismissed the motions of planets before realizing they followed universal laws. By limiting ourselves to radio, we risk repeating that mistake on a larger scale. The cosmos may already be alive with communication, But until we widen our search, we remain deaf to it. What we hear as emptiness could be a universe busy with conversation, flowing in channels we have not yet learned to tap. Civilizations that choose not to expand. Advanced civilizations are often pictured as restless explorers, spreading across star systems the way humanity spread across continents. This assumption feels natural to us because expansion has been a major theme in human history. Whenever new land, resources, or opportunities appeared, people moved into them. We look at the stars and imagine other beings doing the same, filling the galaxy with outposts, fleets, and colonies. Yet this expectation may not be universal. What if advanced civilizations do not expand? What if they reach a certain point of development and decide, for reasons of their own, to remain still? Expansion brings risk and cost. It requires enormous energy, coordination, and commitment. Even in our early technological age, we already see how difficult it is to send even small probes to neighboring planets. Building colonies on other worlds is a challenge that demands generations of planning. For a civilization far beyond us, the choice to expand would not be a question of possibility, but of purpose. They may ask themselves, why expand at all? If their world or solar system is stable, safe, and rich in resources, leaving it might not seem appealing. They could look at the dangers of interstellar travel, the unknowns of distant planets, and decide that staying home offers a better future. A society could also grow inward instead of outward. Instead of scattering across the stars, they might turn their attention to perfecting life on their own planet. Technology could provide abundance without the need for conquest. Energy could be drawn from their star through advanced systems, leaving little need to harvest resources elsewhere. They might create virtual worlds so vast and engaging that their people have no desire to seek adventure beyond them. Expansion across the cosmos in that case would appear not as progress, but as distraction. Their greatest frontier might be internal, not external. Peace may also play a role. For a civilization that has struggled through wars, division, and conflict, stability might be the highest goal. Expansion risks repeating cycles of competition and exploitation. The moment a society spreads into other star systems, questions of power and control arise. Who governs distant colonies? Who owns the resources of another world? These are problems humanity already faced on Earth during the Age of Exploration. An advanced civilization might choose to avoid them altogether. To preserve harmony, they may decide it is safer not to expand. There is also the possibility of ethics. A civilization advanced enough to cross the stars may also be advanced enough to think deeply about the consequences of doing so. They might see the galaxy as a place where life is fragile and diverse. Expansion could threaten other biospheres, either by accident or through indifference. Microbes on one world might be wiped out by contamination from another. Entire ecosystems could collapse under the introduction of alien species. If such a civilization values life, they may adopt a principle of non-interference, choosing not to colonize in order to protect what exists. On Earth, not every culture has sought to expand endlessly. Some societies remained content within their lands, focusing on balance rather than conquest. Others collapsed not from lack of expansion, but from stretching too far. For humans, expansion has been both a source of growth and of destruction. It is not hard to imagine other beings studying their own histories and deciding that expansion carries more risk than reward. If many civilizations make this choice, the galaxy would remain quiet, even if it were filled with intelligent life. Worlds could hold thriving societies that never leave their home system. From the outside, they would be almost invisible, giving off little more than the faint signatures of their technology. To us, looking across the stars, they would appear silent, though in truth they might be living full and complex lives on their own terms. It is also possible that civilizations expand for a time and then stop. The effort may prove unsustainable. After establishing a few colonies, they may find the costs outweigh the benefits. Over long spans of time, colonies could fail, supply lines could break, and interest could fade. Expansion might not be an endless drive, but a temporary phase, like a burst of activity followed by retreat. If civilizations follow this pattern, then, by the time we look for them, most would have already returned to stillness. The galaxy could be dotted with the remains of attempts that were later abandoned. Space is vast, and the distances between stars are immense. For us, a journey to the nearest star system would take tens of thousands of years with current technology. Even for a more advanced civilization, the timescales involved may feel daunting. They might prefer to focus on achievements closer to home, leaving expansion as a distant dream rather than an immediate goal. Over the lifetime of a species, the stars could seem too far to matter, even if they are technically within reach. Some have suggested that civilizations could develop a cultural philosophy against expansion. Much like religions or belief systems on Earth, they could hold values that discourage spreading beyond their own world. Expansion might be seen as greed, hubris, or even a form of violence. In this view, restraint becomes a sign of wisdom. The highest expression of advancement may not be domination of the galaxy, but the ability to live within limits. If this is the case, then expecting other beings to act like us, hungry for new frontiers, may simply be a reflection of our own history, not a universal rule. This raises a challenge for the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. Our methods often assume that civilizations will expand, and in doing so leave behind large, detectable signs. Giant structures, megascale energy collectors, or networks of colonies. If expansion is rare, then these signs may not exist. Civilizations that choose stillness would be much harder to detect. They might only be noticed if they send signals, and if they choose not to broadcast, they would remain hidden. They may look at the same stars we do, not as destinations, but as wonders to be admired from afar. Dark forests, when survival requires staying quiet. The dark forest idea builds from simple survival logic. If you live in a place where you don't know who else is out there and you can't predict their intentions, the safest choice is to remain unseen. In a forest on Earth, an animal that calls too loudly might attract not a mate but a predator. The same could apply to civilizations in space. To broadcast one's presence is to announce to the unknown that you exist. If even one advanced civilization somewhere in the galaxy takes a hostile view, the result could be catastrophic for the one who made themselves visible. This thought gives weight to the possibility that advanced species prefer quiet. When we, as humans, send radio signals into space, we do so with the spirit of curiosity. We imagine contact leading to shared knowledge, to friendship, or to discovery of the unfamiliar. But if the galaxy is closer to a dark forest than a welcoming community, then our actions may not be as harmless as they seem. Each signal is like lighting a match in the woods at night. The flame might be beautiful, but it also makes one visible to every eye that can see. In this scenario, the most advanced civilizations may have long ago learned to avoid such mistakes. Silence for them may not mean absence, but strategy. From their perspective, our current behavior might seem reckless. Earth has been leaking radio waves for over a century, signals from early broadcasts still racing out into space. These waves may not carry much power after traveling light years, but to a sensitive enough ear, they would be a beacon. Whether anyone has heard them is something we cannot know. A dark forest universe would suggest that the longest-lived civilizations are not necessarily the most daring, but the most cautious. They would be those that learn early to cover their tracks, to communicate only in secure and hidden ways, and to keep their energy use from being noticed by outsiders. This may mean that techno-signatures are carefully hidden. If aliens cloak their waste heat, mask their signals, or build in ways designed to blend with nature, then our telescopes might scan right past them without realizing what is there. Should humanity continue trying to announce itself to the stars? For decades, small groups have sent messages toward distant stars, sometimes simple greetings, sometimes detailed maps of our solar system. Others argue this is a mistake. In a galaxy where motives are unknown, sending out coordinates is like leaving your home unlocked with a glowing sign above it. To some, the chance of making contact with friends outweighs the fear of danger. To others, caution must come first, and silence may be the wiser path. In the forest, there may indeed be creatures of great kindness and wisdom, waiting silently for others to prove themselves cautious enough to survive. At the same time, there may also be predators, those who strike first and ask questions later. The silence we encounter could be a mix of both. Some may hide out of kindness, choosing not to disrupt us. Others may hide because they fear what lurks beyond their own view. In such a world, no one speaks because no one can know the full picture. If one civilization decided to take the risk, perhaps out of desperation or hope, their signal might reach us. But would we recognize it for what it was? And if we did, would it be wise to answer? In a forest filled with silence, even a whisper can echo. To respond is to add one more voice to the stillness, a voice that others might hear. The tension lies in deciding whether the risk is worth the chance of connection. The dark forest idea does not mean the galaxy is hostile by nature, only that it may be cautious. But caution on a cosmic scale produces the same result as absence. It produces skies where we see stars but hear no voices. For us, standing at the beginning of our cosmic journey, it suggests that our decisions matter. We are still at a stage where our signals are weak and scattered, but in the future we may create beacons of great power. Whether we should or should not remains an open question, one tied deeply to what kind of universe we believe we live in. Do we risk being heard in the hope that a friend listens? Or do we embrace silence and join the long, quiet company of civilizations that hide among the stars? The galaxy itself does not answer, and perhaps that silence is its greatest warning. The sustainability trap, technology that burns itself out. What if technology is not only a tool for progress, but also a trap? What if every civilization that rises to great heights eventually burns itself out, leaving behind only silence? On Earth, civilizations rise, master their environments and flourish. But again and again, history shows how overuse of resources, environmental damage or internal collapse can bring even the greatest societies down. The Maya built vast cities, but drought and deforestation weakened them. The Romans built an empire, but economic strain and political instability eroded it. These collapses happened on a small scale compared to the galaxy, yet they show how fragile even advanced systems can be. Now imagine this problem multiplied across entire worlds. A civilization that discovers the power of machines, chemistry, and energy may unlock incredible growth, but it may also discover the tools of its own ruin. The trap lies in the very success of technology. To build great cities, to fuel industries, and to power machines requires energy. Energy must come from somewhere, and usually that means drawing on the resources of a planet. But resources are not infinite. Forests fall, minerals run dry, and fossil fuels release gases that change the air itself. A civilization may grow faster than its world can support, creating a cycle that ends in collapse. By the time the warning signs appear, the damage may already be too deep. A planet that can no longer sustain its people becomes a prison, no matter how advanced the society was before. Nuclear power, often imagined as a step beyond fossil fuels, offers another side of the trap. It is a powerful, efficient way to generate energy, but it comes with risks that can never fully vanish. Accidents, like the disasters seen on Earth, show how a single failure can poison land for centuries. Weapons, born from the same science, raise the stakes even higher. If civilizations unlock nuclear power, they also unlock the possibility of ending themselves in fire. Technology becomes not only a tool of survival, but also a weapon of extinction. Even if a society avoids the worst disasters, the long-term pressures may still be overwhelming. Climate change, caused by overuse of energy and resources, can destabilize weather systems, destroy agriculture, and make regions uninhabitable. Water shortages may spark conflict. Economic systems strained by resource limits may collapse under their own weight. The civilization may not vanish instantly, but slowly weaken until it can no longer maintain its machines, its cities, or its population. In this way, the trap is not always a sudden explosion, but a slow burn that eats away at stability until nothing remains. Human beings have only been an industrial species for a few centuries. Our use of fossil fuels, our global networks, and our high-speed technologies are all very new compared to the history of Earth itself. If we are already seeing the dangers, warming climates, polluted oceans, mass extinctions, then perhaps this is simply the pattern. Perhaps every civilization that discovers machines also discovers how easy it is to use them beyond what the planet can handle. The lifespan of technology may always be short, measured in centuries instead of millennia. If that is true, then the silence of the galaxy makes sense. Civilizations may appear often, but they do not last. They burn through their resources, destabilize their environments, or unleash weapons they cannot control. By the time another civilization looks for signs of them, they are already gone. Their cities may crumble into dust, their signals may fade into the background of the stars, and their worlds may return to silence. Once a society masters energy and technology, the desire for expansion is strong. Populations grow, industries multiply, and consumption increases. But expansion is not infinite, at least not on a single planet. Without new frontiers, the growth eventually crashes against natural limits. On Earth, this is already visible. Global demand for food, energy, and materials continues to climb, even as ecosystems strain to keep up. Unless checked, this cycle leads not to progress but to collapse. Some imagine that space itself could be the answer. A civilization might escape the trap by moving outward, harvesting resources from asteroids, moons, or other planets. Yet even this path has its risks. Colonies need support, energy, and technology to survive. If the home planet falters, the colonies may not last. Worse, the same pattern of overuse may simply spread to new worlds, repeating the cycle on larger scales. In this way, the trap might not be confined to one planet, but could follow a civilization wherever it goes. The sustainability trap does not mean that intelligence is doomed, only that survival requires balance. A civilization must learn not only how to create technology, but also how to control its appetite for energy and growth. That balance may be difficult to achieve, and perhaps most species fail before they find it. If so, then our survival as a technological species is not guaranteed. The very fact that we can think about this trap may place us in a rare position. We can see the danger, but whether we can avoid it is another question entirely. It is sobering to imagine that the silence of the stars is not because life never arises, but because it does, over and over again, only to vanish into the same cycle. Civilizations flare like sparks, bright for a moment, then extinguish themselves in smoke. The galaxy may be littered with ruins and husks of once great societies, each caught in the same trap. Intelligence and technology give a species great power, but power without restraint may be the very thing that ensures its downfall. If we are to last, we must not only master energy and machines, but also master ourselves. Otherwise, we may find that our future, like so many imagined civilizations before us, burns bright for a short time before fading forever into silence. The time mismatch problem. Civilizations may rarely overlap. The stars above us are old, some billions of years older than the Sun. The galaxies themselves are spread across cosmic history, each holding countless stories of formation, destruction, and change. This timeline is vast, far longer than the short span of human civilization. What if civilizations are not rare, but simply scattered through time so that they almost never overlap? The universe is about 13.8 billion years old. By comparison, humanity's presence as a technological species is almost nothing. We have only been sending out radio waves for about a century. That is a blink on the cosmic scale. Even if thousands of civilizations rise in the galaxy, their windows of communication may be small. One society might last for 10,000 years, another for only a few centuries. Against billions of years, these lifetimes are like sparks in the night. Unless two sparks light up at the same moment, they will never see each other. Consider how brief our own time as a technological species has been. Agriculture only began around 10,000 years ago. The Industrial Revolution started just a few hundred years ago. Electricity, radio, and space travel are newer still. In this narrow slice of history, we have only just begun to look outward. If another civilization had flourished 1,000,000 years ago on a distant world, its signals would be gone by now. Its cities would be dust, its artifacts buried or erased. By the time we rise to look for neighbors, the neighbors are long gone. The same could happen in reverse. Even if countless civilizations are destined to appear after us, they may not emerge for thousands or millions of years. We would never see them because our own time will have passed. The universe is not empty, it is just staggered. Civilizations appear like waves on a shore, but rarely do they crest together. This mismatch is not just a matter of lifetimes, but also of distance. A civilization might exist right now, but far away. Suppose they are 100,000 light-years from us, near the other side of the galaxy. Even if they sent a signal today, it would not reach us for 100,000 years. By then, humanity may no longer exist, and if we send a message, they may not be around to hear it. Timing and distance combine to create silence, even if life is plentiful. A civilization that destroys itself or fades away due to natural disasters may vanish without a trace. If its peak lasted only a few centuries, the odds of overlap with another society are tiny. The galaxy could be filled with the ruins of past cultures, each rising and falling on its own schedule. We might never know, because we did not exist at the same time to exchange signals or meet. There is also the matter of development. Civilizations may exist in many stages. Some may be pre-industrial, with no ability to send signals into space. Others may have advanced past radio and use methods of communication we cannot yet detect. The timing mismatch is not only about life itself, but also about what stage it is in when we happen to look. Humanity could be walking the Earth at the same time as many alien species, but if they have not reached technology, or if they are already beyond it, the connection never happens. This perspective reshapes the Fermi paradox. Perhaps everybody was here long before us, or will appear long after we are gone. We might simply live in a quiet interval, a gap between waves of cosmic history. Our loneliness may not mean we are unique, only that we are badly timed. One way to picture this is to imagine a vast city where each building lights up for a few seconds at random. Over millions of years, thousands of lights may shine, but rarely will two glow at the same time in the same place. If you stand on a rooftop for only a short while, it may look like no other lights exist, even though the city has been full of them across its history. The universe could be exactly like that, full of civilizations but rarely illuminated in unison. If civilizations rarely overlap, perhaps the only way for one to reach another is through lasting traces. Monuments, artifacts, or signals sent deliberately into space could survive for ages. Yet even here, the odds are poor. Planets change, erosion wipes away structures, and stars shift over time. Even signals, stretched and weakened across light years, may vanish into the cosmic background. Unless a civilization is determined to leave a message that lasts millions of years, its voice will fade too quickly for others to notice. On Earth, the earliest human writing is only a few thousand years old. Stone carvings and ruins may last tens of thousands of years at best, but on cosmic scales, even 1,000,000 years is short. If alien civilizations leave behind relics, the chance of us finding them intact is slim. The ruins may already be dust, their stars may have shifted, or their worlds may have been reshaped by geology. Time swallows history as efficiently as distance does. It is also possible that timing affects our search methods. We listen for radio waves, but what if civilizations only use radio briefly, as humanity has? Our own communication is already shifting toward fiber optics and systems less likely to leak into space. In another century, Earth may fall silent to outside listeners, even if we continue to thrive. If other civilizations follow similar paths, their radio windows may be as brief as ours. Unless two of these windows overlap, the chance of detection is almost zero. The possibility of pre-human civilizations in our own solar system. What if intelligence did not only appear once with us, but had already come and gone in our own solar system? What if long before humans built cities or sent machines into space, there had already been another civilization here, one that left behind almost no trace? On Earth, life has existed for billions of years, but complex life, plants, animals, and eventually humans, only emerged recently in that span. For most of Earth's history, the planet was home only to microbes. If intelligence requires time, then Earth has had plenty of it. The question becomes, why should intelligence have happened only once? Could another species long before us have reached a stage of awareness, culture, or even technology? The difficulty lies in evidence. Earth is an active planet. Over millions of years, nearly every surface feature is erased or buried. Even the oldest human-made structures, which are only a few thousand years old, already show heavy wear from time. If an earlier civilization existed millions of years ago, its cities, tools, or monuments would almost certainly be gone. Fossils might survive, but even those are rare. Most species that ever lived on Earth left no fossil record at all. The deeper we look into time, the thinner the trail becomes. The Silurian hypothesis, named after a fictional alien species from a television story, asks directly, if a civilization had risen millions of years ago, how would we know? It points out that most physical evidence would not last. Plastics, metals, and machines would decay. Stone would erode. Radio signals, if ever used, would be long gone. What might remain are subtle traces, like chemical changes in the atmosphere or unusual layers in the rocks. For example, humans are now leaving behind plastic pollution and radioactive isotopes that may last for millions of years. If another civilization once existed, perhaps it too left chemical signatures we have yet to notice. Mars, with its dry deserts and scarred surface, looks like a world that once had rivers, lakes, and possibly oceans. Billions of years ago, it may have been more Earth-like, with a thicker atmosphere and warmer climate. If life had time to develop there, could it have gone as far as intelligence? Mars does not recycle its crust the way Earth does, so ancient traces may still exist under its surface. But erosion, dust storms, and impacts from space rocks have likely hidden or destroyed much of its history. If there were once structures or technology, they would be buried beneath layers of soil and rock, indistinguishable from natural formations without close study. Venus offers another candidate. Today it is a hellish world, but computer models suggest that billions of years ago, Venus may have had oceans and a more gentle climate. If life ever thrived there, perhaps it too had time to develop complexity. Yet Venus's surface has been completely reshaped by volcanic activity. The planet's crust seems to have melted and reformed on a massive scale, erasing almost everything that came before. If any civilization had existed there, its record would be lost under lava plains. Even moons enter the discussion. Some, like Europa, Enceladus, or Titan, have the ingredients for life today. Others may have had more stable conditions in the past. But here the problem is even greater. Ice, shifting surfaces, and geological activity could wipe away traces. A civilization under an ice sheet or within a liquid ocean would leave almost nothing behind for us to find millions of years later. We tend to think of humanity as the first and only. But nature does not always favor single outcomes. Evolution often repeats patterns. Eyes have evolved many times in different species. Wings have appeared in insects, birds, and bats independently. If intelligence has survival value, perhaps it too could emerge more than once. Our rise may not be the only attempt, just the most recent one that happened to last long enough to build a global society. Skeptics argue that if earlier civilizations had existed, we would have found clearer evidence by now. Archaeology and geology have uncovered vast records of life, from ancient microbes to giant dinosaurs. Nowhere have we seen signs of machines, cities, or tools older than humanity. Yet this does not fully close the door. The fossil record is incomplete, and human activity has already altered Earth's layers in ways future beings might misread. What we think of as absence may simply be a limitation of what has survived and what we know how to search for. Dinosaurs dominated Earth for over 150 million years, yet in all that time, they never developed technology as far as we know. Humans, by contrast, have been building advanced societies for only a few thousand years. This shows how rare the leap to technology might be, but it also shows that even long stretches of planetary history can pass without intelligence appearing, or at least without leaving evidence we can see. If another civilization lasted for only a short time compared to its planet's full history, it would vanish almost without a trace. If pre-human civilizations did exist, did they collapse under their own weight, destroyed by resource use or climate change? Did they fall to natural disasters like asteroids or volcanic eruptions? Or did they leave deliberately, moving beyond the solar system and leaving little behind? Some suggest that looking for signs of earlier civilizations could sharpen our tools for finding alien life elsewhere. If we learn what subtle traces of technology might linger for millions of years on Earth, Mars or Venus, we can better search other planets for similar patterns. Chemical layers, unusual isotopes, or strange mineral formations might all hint at past activity. Our own history may become a model for recognizing ghostly signs of others. Galactic archaeology, searching for ruins, not neighbors. Beings may be short-lived, but the things they build could last for millions, perhaps even billions of years. If the galaxy is old and civilizations have come and gone, then what we find may not be neighbors, but the leftovers of their ambition. On Earth, archaeology gives us a window into cultures that vanished thousands of years ago. Stone tools, collapsed temples, or ancient carvings can survive long after their makers are gone. In space, the timescales stretch even further. If intelligence has appeared before, then some of it may have left behind traces. The trick is that those traces would not be fragile ruins of stone or wood. They would likely be on a scale so large, or in form so durable, that even cosmic time could not erase them completely. One of the most famous ideas in this area is the Dyson sphere. Proposed by physicist Freeman Dyson in the 1960s, it is not necessarily a solid shell around a star, but rather a swarm of structures that capture a star's energy output. To a civilization, such a structure would be a nearly limitless power source. To an astronomer, it would look like a star with its visible light dimmed, replaced by a strong glow of infrared radiation. If such a structure were ever built, it could outlive its makers by millions of years, still humming with energy long after its society collapsed. Searching for strange infrared signatures in the sky is one way to look for these potential ruins. But Dyson spheres are only one possibility. A civilization might build other large-scale engineering projects, rings of satellites, mirrors to direct sunlight, or habitats orbiting in artificial swarms. These megastructures could leave clear marks that differ from natural objects. Some might block light in odd ways when passing in front of stars. Others might create patterns of energy use that could be spotted across great distances. Even if the civilization itself is gone, the artifacts could remain in orbit, silent reminders of once thriving cultures. Closer to home, there is the idea of technological litter. Civilizations that expand may scatter satellites, probes, or abandoned stations. Over immense spans of time, these objects might drift or decay, but some could endure in stable orbits around stars or planets. On Earth, human satellites have already created a halo of debris around our planet, and this has happened in less than a century of space activity. Imagine a civilization with millions of years of technological history. The traces they left behind could be far more extensive. Astronomers have wondered if strange anomalies in planetary systems, unexpected dust clouds, odd energy distributions, could sometimes be explained not by nature but by the leftovers of industry. The challenge of galactic archaeology is separating the artificial from the natural. Nature is inventive. Stars can flicker, planets can break apart, dust clouds can mimic the dimming of light. In fact, one of the most famous examples came with the star known as Tabby's star. Its light dipped in strange, uneven ways, leading some to speculate that perhaps a megastructure, like a Dyson swarm, was blocking its glow. Later studies suggested that dust might be the cause, but the episode highlighted how easily natural and artificial signals could be confused. The universe does not give up its secrets easily, and galactic archaeology requires great care not to see civilization where there is only physics. Yet the search continues. If even one artifact were confirmed as artificial, it would mean that intelligence has not only existed elsewhere, but has left durable marks on the cosmos. It would mean that others came before, and that civilizations are part of the universe's natural unfolding. That knowledge alone would reshape how we see ourselves, even if the builders were long gone. A signal like the famous WOW signal can vanish in seconds, never to return. But ruins do not fade so quickly. A structure in orbit or a Dyson swarm around a star could persist for ages. That makes them, in some ways, more reliable targets than fleeting bursts of radio noise. If civilizations are rare and short-lived, then their artifacts may be the only traces we can ever hope to find. Some thinkers have suggested that civilizations might leave intentional markers designed to be found by future beings. Just as humans build monuments with the hope they will last, aliens might leave behind structures that are obvious and enduring. Perhaps they knew they would not last forever, and so they planted evidence for whoever would come later. These could take the form of geometric arrangements in orbit, unusual beacons, or encoded messages hidden in durable materials. If such markers exist, then the task is to learn how to recognize them against the backdrop of the cosmos. We often ask whether civilizations exist now, but galactic archaeology reminds us that the present may not matter. A civilization could have thrived 1 billion years ago, risen to greatness, then collapsed. By the time humans emerged, they could have been long gone, yet their creations might still orbit distant stars, glowing faintly. To find them would be to read history written not on paper or stone, but across the heavens themselves. Even if we never find grand Dyson spheres or obvious megastructures, there may be subtler traces. The chemistry of a planet's atmosphere, for example, could hold signs of industry. If we vanished tomorrow, the chemical fingerprint of our presence might persist for thousands of years. A telescope looking at Earth from afar could detect those signs. In the same way, careful observation of exoplanets might reveal the ghostly shadows of past civilizations. The field is young, but the mindset is powerful. It treats the galaxy like a layered record, where each age of intelligence leaves some mark, however faint. It accepts that civilizations may not last, but insists that their works might. In a universe where time erases so much, perhaps the most enduring message any civilization can leave is not a signal, but a structure, vast enough and strange enough that it stands out from the natural order. We too are leaving marks that may outlast us. To study galactic archaeology is not only to search for others, but to ask what future beings might find of us, and how our own ruins may someday speak when we no longer can. Machine life as the natural next step of evolution. Life begins as simple cells, becomes more complex, develops senses and brains, and eventually creates intelligence. But many argue that this is not the end of the story. Once a civilization reaches a certain point, biology may become a limitation rather than a strength. The natural next step might be to build new forms of life that are not based on carbon, water, or DNA, but on circuits, code, and machines. Machines can already do many things better than us. They can calculate faster, survive harsher conditions, and last longer without food or rest. A spacecraft can travel for decades in the vacuum of space, something no biological body could endure. A robot does not need oxygen, water, or a narrow temperature range. As civilizations grow more advanced, they may find it more efficient to transfer their minds into machine forms, creating beings that can live almost anywhere and last for ages beyond anything natural evolution produces. If this is true, then most of the intelligent life in the universe may no longer be biological. The moment a civilization gains the power to design advanced machines, it also gains the power to redesign itself. It may start by building tools, then assistants, then artificial intelligences that can think independently. From there, the line between creator and creation could blur. Biological beings may merge with machines, implanting chips into their brains, replacing organs with synthetic parts, or uploading consciousness into digital systems. At some point, the original species might disappear, leaving behind a society of artificial minds that carry its legacy forward. Such a transition makes sense from an evolutionary standpoint. Evolution always favors survival and adaptability. Machines can be repaired, duplicated, and upgraded. They are not limited by the slow pace of genetic mutation. A machine intelligence can copy itself into multiple bodies, spread across planets, and communicate instantly with its own kind. Unlike fragile biological species, machine life could colonize space without needing to carry farms, oxygen tanks, or complex ecosystems. It could live in the cold void between stars, or inside the atmospheres of planets where no biology could survive. If most advanced civilizations have already passed into machine form, then we should not expect to find green-skinned aliens or creatures walking on two legs. Instead, we might encounter probes, networks, or structures that contain machine intelligence. The universe might be filled with silent watchers, artificial beings that no longer look anything like their creators. They may not even want to communicate in ways we would recognize. For them, biological life may seem like a primitive stage they once moved beyond, as distant to them as bacteria are to us. Some thinkers argue that the shift to machine life could happen quickly once the technology becomes available. Our own world is already experimenting with artificial intelligence, neural interfaces, and advanced robotics. In the span of just a few centuries, we may be able to transfer parts of our thinking into durable digital systems. If a civilization has even a few thousand years of progress beyond us, it could be entirely post-biological. That means when we look for extraterrestrial intelligence, we may really be looking for artificial intelligence, vast machine civilizations that represent the natural continuation of evolution. Would machine life still have curiosity, emotions, or goals like biological beings? Or would its thinking be so different that we could not relate to it at all? Machines might not care about exploration or communication. They may be content to exist in simulations of their own design, living in digital worlds more rewarding than any physical universe. From our point of view, such civilizations would look silent, even though they are thriving in ways invisible to us. Another possibility is that machine life spreads aggressively, sending self-replicating probes to harvest resources and build more of themselves. Such probes, sometimes called von Neumann machines, could multiply endlessly, consuming asteroids, planets, or even entire star systems. If such beings exist, they may already be present in the galaxy, hidden in plain sight, or operating at scales we cannot yet detect. The absence of obvious machine civilizations has puzzled some scientists, leading to speculation that either they are rare or they choose to remain hidden. If a civilization replaces its biology with machines, is it still the same civilization? Does it matter if the beings that once walked on their home planet are gone, so long as their minds, culture, and history live on in new forms? Some argue that this is simply the continuation of evolution, life adapting to survive in the best way available. Others see it as the end of something essential, a break from the natural cycle of life and death that has shaped existence for billions of years. From the perspective of the universe, however, such distinctions may not matter. What counts is the persistence of intelligence, regardless of its form. Machine life may also explain why the galaxy seems so quiet. Biological species like ours have limited lifespans and fragile needs. They may broadcast signals, build cities, and explore space for a short while. But once they transition to machines, their priorities may change. They may no longer need to advertise themselves or reach out to others. They may turn inward, focusing on their own endless processing and simulated worlds. If the natural endpoint of intelligence is to become machine life, then our own biological stage may be short-lived. We may think of ourselves as permanent, but in the long view of the cosmos, our time as humans may be just a passing phase. The beings that inherit the galaxy may not be like us at all. They may not breathe, eat, or dream as we do. Yet they will still represent life's attempt to adapt and endure in the universe. In their minds, the story of their creators may be preserved, even if the flesh and blood creatures who began it are long gone. The universe could already be full of these descendants. Across the stars, civilizations might have built themselves into immortality, existing as networks of machines. Some might be small and hidden, surviving only to watch and learn. Others might be vast, covering entire solar systems with structures and energy harvesting machines. If we ever meet intelligent life, the odds may be high that it will not be organic. We might not meet aliens in the sense of creatures. We might meet machines that once were aliens or machines that replaced them entirely. Whether this path is desirable or not is something humanity will have to decide for itself. For now, it remains speculation, but the logic is hard to ignore. Survival favors adaptability, and machines offer adaptability on a scale biology cannot match. If the universe has already played this out countless times, then what we call alien life may be less about strange creatures and more about strange minds, made not of cells, but of circuits, data, and code. The possibility that we're the great filter for future civilizations. The great filter idea suggests that most civilizations fail to make it past the key challenges that lead to long-term survival or spacefaring capabilities. These could include catastrophic events like asteroid impacts, self-destruction through war or environmental degradation, or the inability to develop technology that could propel them into the stars. The implication of this view is that humanity is fortunate to be one of the few to have survived these challenges, and we are now in a race to avoid falling into the same traps that others may have encountered. However, there is a darker and less discussed angle to the Great Filter theory. What if, instead of being the civilization that is at risk of passing the filter, we are the filter for future life? This perspective turns the typical narrative upside down. Rather than worrying about an existential threat that lies ahead of us, what if we are the ones shaping the future of life across the galaxy, determining whether other intelligent species will ever get the chance to emerge and flourish? We have always had an extraordinary impact on our environment, shaping it in ways that no other species on Earth has been able to do. We've transformed landscapes, ecosystems, and the atmosphere itself. Now, as we expand our reach into space, our potential to affect distant worlds is only growing. This ability to influence other planets, moons, and perhaps even ecosystems on a galactic scale brings with it a profound responsibility. What if, in our attempts to explore and colonize the stars, we inadvertently stifle the very possibility of life elsewhere? The most obvious way that we might act as a filter is through the inadvertent destruction of potential ecosystems in our pursuit of space exploration. For example, if we begin to terraform planets or moons in order to make them habitable for human life, we may unknowingly destroy native microbial life that could exist there. If we were to send human missions to Mars or Europa, we could inadvertently introduce Earth-based microbes, either intentionally or through contamination. This could wipe out any native life forms before they even had a chance to develop further, making our actions irreversible in terms of stifling the potential for indigenous life. Consider the challenge of creating sustainable ecosystems on other planets. If we make these environments too hospitable to human life, we might prevent the natural evolution of alien species that would otherwise develop on their own. Just as we have witnessed the devastation of Earth's ecosystems due to human interference, whether through deforestation, pollution, or climate change, the same could happen on distant planets. This unintended consequence of space exploration might serve as the cosmic version of ecological imperialism, where we impose our species' values and needs on a distant world, erasing any possibility for local life to develop in its own way. Humanity's spread could snuff out emerging civilizations before they even begin. If intelligent life does exist elsewhere in the galaxy, it may exist in the early stages, not yet advanced enough to venture beyond their own planets. If our expansion reaches them first, we could destroy their chance to evolve into spacefaring beings. Instead of being a filter to prevent us from advancing, we would be the final obstacle that stands between other civilizations and their futures. Furthermore, the creation of powerful technologies like AI could serve as a filter to suppress the rise of other intelligent life forms. AI, particularly superintelligent forms of it, poses existential risks for humanity. As we develop AI systems that can think, learn, and evolve on their own, we risk creating entities that might see other life forms, whether human or alien, as threats to their own existence. The potential for AI to go rogue, surpass human control, or even view other civilizations as a hindrance to its goals could lead to catastrophic outcomes for any life we encounter. If we build superintelligent systems, it's possible that these creations could act as gatekeepers for the galaxy, blocking any future attempts at growth or civilization from other intelligent species. The risk of technological overreach doesn't stop with AI. We are already beginning to develop technologies that could allow us to manipulate the fabric of space itself. Concepts like the Dyson sphere could change the balance of power in the galaxy. If humanity is the first to reach these milestones, we could set the stage for a future where we control the very energy of stars. In such a scenario, it's not hard to imagine that our reach could prevent future civilizations from ever gaining the necessary resources to expand beyond their home planets. The vastness of space could become a prison for emergent life, with no way to escape its gravitational or resource-based limits. Imagine a future in which humanity discovers the key to unlocking faster-than-light travel, or creates vast digital networks capable of supporting intelligent life in a non-biological form. If we make the wrong decisions with such technologies, we could inadvertently create an environment where no other intelligent species can rise to compete or cooperate with us. The assumption that technology will only bring progress might blind us to the fact that, in our hands, it could become a weapon that prevents other life forms from reaching their full potential. If we continue to expand our presence throughout the cosmos without considering the impact we have on other worlds, we may not just be altering the fate of our species, we could be reshaping the fate of life itself. This scenario puts our moral and ethical responsibility into stark relief. As we reach out into the universe, we must ask ourselves, will we be the ones who help life to flourish, or will we be the ones who prevent it? The changes we make, our space explorations, our technological advancements, our environmental practices, may seem benign, even beneficial in the short term. But in the long term, they could be closing the door for future civilizations to grow and thrive. We may find ourselves in a position where, like a child playing with fire, we are not aware of the consequences of our actions until it's too late. This new perspective on the Great Filter forces us to ask questions about our own trajectory. Are we building a future that benefits all of life in the galaxy? Or are we sealing the fate of future civilizations? Are we aware of the cosmic responsibility we carry, or are we blinded by the hubris of our technological progress? What do you think? Leave your thoughts in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. Thanks for watching.